And good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Baseball on this Saturday morning. Yes, the sun did come up today. Giants had a tough one last night. Very tough up in Seattle. They lose the game 6-5 last night. They had a 5-1 lead going into the eighth inning, and a lot of stuff happened last night that we have to talk about on the show today. Not a good game for the Giants last night. It didn't turn out well. And, of course, on Wednesday, they end up losing to the Chicago White Sox, probably the worst hitting team in the history of baseball, and probably will lose more games than the 1962 Mets. And in the last two games, the Giants have given up 12 runs to two teams that are the two worst hitting teams in 60 years in Major League Baseball. So it's happening at a bad time for the ball club. These are games you like to win. It's not the end of the season by any means. There's still 32 games to go, and they've still got all sorts of chances. But when you watch the way the game unfolded and the way they played the last couple of days, you wonder what's going on with the ball club. So they had a 5-1 lead last night. Hayden Birdsong started off, and the kid is tired. There's no question about it. Look, Seattle is not a good hitting team. We've said it, regardless of the fact that they did get 6 hits in a row in the eighth inning to turn that 5-1 deficit into a 6-5 lead. But they're not a good hitting team. And Birdsong got in trouble in the third and fourth inning. He was in trouble. And, of course, he got out of it. He only gave up 1 hit, but walked 4, hit a batter, and he was constantly behind in the count. And the kid's tired. It looks like his arm is lagging a little bit, and when he misses, he's missing all over the place. But he got it done. And the Giants turned it over to the bullpen last night. Giants hit some home runs last night. Wade, boy, the ball travels to center field, doesn't it, at this ballpark? Knocked one out in the first inning to give the Giants a run. Conforto knocked one out in center field to give Giants 2 more runs. Ramos, wow, hit it into like the third deck. As many decks as they got, he hit it into that deck in left field, just a shot. And put the Giants up 5-1. This Luke Raley hit a home run off Jelly. He was the first reliever in the fifth inning, but the Giants were cruising along 5-1. A few things happened, though, last night. One is Aaron Hicks. The question is, Jordan Hicks, whatever his first name, I forgot his first name here, but when he started warming up in the seventh inning, his arm felt funny, felt like a zinger, and that's not good for the Giants. And they've used him as a starter. They put him back in the bullpen. He's going to play catch today or tomorrow to see how it feels. But, boy, you just don't want to hear more trouble for Hicks, who's had a great season for the Giants, and they need him in the bullpen. But he was not available last night, and that put Roop in the game in the seventh inning, and he did a great job. And then it got to the eighth inning, and this is what it's worth talking about with Tyler Rogers in the game at that point. Now, look, we know he creates soft contact. He's not a strikeout pitcher. And there are times he'll hit a ground ball to second, ground ball to second, ground ball to first, little tapper off the side of the mound. We've seen it a million times with him. But there are other times when the ball is up and it's not spinning properly that guys have a good approach and they will get hits. And they'll hit it into the outfield. And that's what happened last night. And it was hit after hit after hit. And basically, once it got to be 5-2 with the tying run at the plate, you have mound visits. Walker is ready. You just can't let this game get away and bring Walker in after the score is now 5-5. You just can't do it. Walker has got to be in that game to bail Rogers out. And once Walker came in the game, he faced 6 batters and struck out 5 of them and got the game into the 10th inning. But I know Bob Melvin wanted to get one more out from Tyler Rogers, and he wasn't getting crushed, but he wasn't getting any outs, and he's not a strikeout guy. And once that tying run got to the plate, and then it was 5-3, then 5-4, and then 5-5, it's 6 hits in a row. And it's never happened before in Giants history. The record was 5 in a row without getting an out by Jeremy Affeldt in 2015. So they went too far. with Rogers last night, and that's what happened with the ball club last night. They don't have enough relief pitching right now. If Hicks is down, which he may be down, Duvall, he's got to be back today. And I have no information on this. I don't know his travel agent. I don't know where he is. But I will guarantee you Camilo Duvall will be back today. They need him. They buried him in Sacramento and taught him a lesson and got his head straight and threw the ball well through 5 innings and gave up a run or two. That's about it. He did beautifully at Sacramento. He's ready. Bring him back. They need him. And they've got to give Walker a break, too. The other thing is Eric Miller. And he's had a little bit of a tough second half of the season. And I'm wondering why Taylor Rogers isn't in at the end of the game instead of Eric Miller. Eric Miller should be in the 5th or 6th inning, and Taylor Rogers should be in at the end of the game. Fitzgerald had a tough night last night with all the 4 strikeouts. Hit a ball in the 10th inning. The Giants could not get that run over, could not get the run in the 10th inning. It hit a shot to center field. Julio Rodriguez made a great play and robbed him of a base hit. But then after that, nothing. Dan Wilson, who's the new manager, by the way, Scott Service, got fired as manager of the Mariners. And I understand why. They made 1 playoff appearance in 9 years. And for him, they had a 10-game lead in June. They're now 4.5 back with the win last night and Houston losing. And the team looked dead. Offensively, they're as bad as any team ever, and they're only better than the Chicago White Sox, one of the worst ever. So Dan Wilson, the former catcher, great guy. We've had him on the show, years ago, is the new manager. And Edgar Martinez is the new hitting coach. And they're hoping to get a little bump that way. And when you change managers, you generally get a little bit of a bump. But, boy, the Giants had this one in hand last night, and they let it get away. But I'm bringing Wilson up because in that 10th inning, he intentionally walked Wade to make it first and second. He didn't want his right-hander facing Lamont Wade, who had the home run, a double. He walked last night, hit the ball well last night. Maybe that leg is feeling a little better. And then Ramos and Conforto got punched out as the Giants struck out, believe it or not, 18 times last night. 18 times. And Seattle struck out 14 times. So that's the type of game we had last night. Luis Castillo gave up the 3 home runs, and he was gone. The Seattle bullpen, 4 innings, 2 hits. Of the 12 outs, 9 of them were strikeouts. For the Giants, their pen went 5 1/3 last night, 8 hits. And, of course, giving up the 6 runs, 5 of which were earned. And that one was the ghost runner in the 10th inning. 4 walks and 9 strikeouts. So, crazy game last night. My feeling is Walker should have been in there earlier. You've got mound visits. You got the catcher can go out and talk. And you can get all that done. If Walker's coming in anyway, get him in before this game is tied because he's going to overpower the Mariners, and he did it once he got into the game. So that's what happened last night. Good Saturday morning. I'm ready to go here. For the Giants, they're now 11-9 in August. On the road, they're 27-37. Since the break, they're 18-15. They've got 8 more games against the American League West. They're not against the American League West, but the American League. They're 17-21. They've got 3 with Baltimore, 3 with Kansas City, and 2 more here with Seattle. They do play a day game today, which is unusual in Seattle. Usually it's that Saturday night game. But the Seahawks, you got a doubleheader today. If you're up in Seattle, you got our game at 1 o'clock, and then you get the Seahawks and the Browns tonight. How about that? And that's why we're playing a day game today. So all the dust is settled. One other thing I want to mention, and that's the catching situation. Elias Diaz has been out there. Colorado released him. He's an all-star, 33 years old. He's a right-handed hitter. He can hit. And the Giants chose not to get him and brought Andrew Knapp back, who hasn't played in the big leagues in 2 years. The Giants, in some sense, can't help themselves. They just can't. They have to go after players like that and not take Diaz because they love Casale, and Diaz doesn't know the pitching staff. The guy can hit. This is a team that has trouble hitting. He's a major league catcher. The pitching staff is a veteran pitching staff. They know what they're doing. They've had a good season. They need hitting. Be bold. Take a chance. Get a veteran. Bring a veteran in. We love Andrew Knapp. He's a former Cal guy. He's back in the big leagues after 2 years, after having 12 at-bats with Texas. It's a great story. But please, it's a fringe. Stop with the fringe stuff. Giants can't help themselves. And Diaz will go somewhere else. And Knapp will do the catching with Casale until hopefully Bailey comes back from the oblique. So that was part of last night as well. I just can't believe they would not take Diaz for all these spurious reasons. He doesn't know the staff. He's this and that. He's a pro. He's a veteran. He's an all-star. You have a team that has trouble hitting. If you look through 6 through 9 in the batting order, and you look through baseball, 6 through 9 in the batting order, just about on every team in baseball can't do a thing. And here you have a shot to bring in a major league hitter. Take a chance. Bailey will be back. Be bold. Take a chance. It's part of signing Chapman, signing Snell, and all this kind of stuff. I just think the Giants should have taken a chance with that. So that's my thought. A couple of tough losses. If they happen in April, they don't matter. They happen in August when you're fighting to maintain your life in this wild card race. They don't seem good. 65-65. The Cardinals win last night. They're now 64-64. They just won't go away. And the Cubbies, I said it last week, 64-65. So that's the three of the teams chasing the Mets and Atlanta. The Giants are 5 back, and they do not have the tiebreaker against Atlanta, so that's really 6 back with 32 to play. So there's no time. There's no time for anything other than to win games. And they get Blake Snell today, their guy. And he goes against a Seattle team. I don't care what they did last night. This is not a good offensive team. I expect a big game from Snell today as he goes against Seattle today. So we'll see what happens there. All right, Andy Baggarly is going to join us. He wrote a great game story on the game last night for The Athletic. We'll talk about the things that I just talked about, I'm sure, with Andy. And we've got more good show for you today on this Saturday as we're back. And we've got baseball. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention, and I'll mention it during the show, our good friend Joe Sheehan is going to be on today. He writes the best newsletter, I think, in baseball. It comes out 3, 4, 5 times a week. He's got a gaming newsletter that predicts games and, for the betting public and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to give away, maybe 10 or 20 subscriptions to Joe's newsletter. And if you're interested in getting it, we do this every year. Just send me an email, Marty Lurie, MartyLurie, @yahoo.com. And I'll forward it to Joe, and you'll get a year subscription to his newsletter. So I like to do that every year for him. So if you're interested, we'll try to accommodate everyone who sends me an email, Marty Lurie @yahoo.com. All right, so that's it. We've got baseball today. We've got Snell on the hill today. George Kirby, who's a very good right-handed pitcher, got crushed by Detroit, just crushed by Detroit a couple of starts ago. But generally, he's a tough cookie. So we've got another similar game, probably, to what we had last night. And the Giants better win this one. They cannot afford these losses. So I think they let one get away. It probably could have been avoided. But things happened very quickly last night. And I know what Bob Melvin wanted to do. But, boy, when Walker's ready, you're going to use him anyway. Get him in before the game is tied. That's my point. All right, more coming up. Andy Baggarly next, right here on the Sports Leader. Mignon Hitchcock, a 6-ounce filet topped with Dungeness crab meat. Wow. Reservations are highly recommended, so if you're looking for a getaway that offers great beaches, scenic views, and gourmet food selections, this is it. You need look no further than the Tides Wharf and the Inn at the Tides in beautiful Bodega Bay. All right, great to have you back with us. Joining us is Andrew Baggarly at Extra Bags on Twitter. He's an outstanding baseball writer for The Athletic. Extra, how are you today?
Hey, Marty, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Let me tell you, I've watched baseball for many, many, many years, and I didn't think that one was going to get away from the Giants last night. That was one that I know when you get a new manager, there's always a bump. The new manager always wins his first game, but boy, I didn't think it was going to happen last night. What did you think?
No, I don't think anyone did. I mean, the Giants get 3 home runs off a good pitcher. They've got their full complement in their bullpen. And, every once in a while, Tyler Rogers has a game where the ball's up and teams have a good approach against him. And, you got to credit the Mariners with hanging in there. I mean, they've gone through a lot in the last 48, 72 hours. They're getting kind of beat down at home. They really kind of needed to peel themselves off the deck and continue to have good at-bats and take good swings, and that's what they did. And it happened so fast. It was, 17 pitches and boom, 6 hits in a row, no outs against Tyler Rogers. And then you kind of knew once it went to the 10th, that the Giants are probably still thinking about those 2 10-inning losses against the Braves where they couldn't get the automatic runner home. The Braves did. You kind of had a feeling that maybe it might go that way again because it's even a little easier for the home team. And then sure enough, Luis Rivas, a little undersized guy who spent 9 years in the minor leagues, playing in his 26th game. And you know what? He made himself unforgettable for Dan Wilson. I guarantee you that. Dan Wilson's always going to remember his first major league managerial win, no matter how long he does this. Mariners hope he does it for a long, long time. And Luis Rivas is the guy who got the hit that walked it off. So kind of a neat little moment for him. Spent a decade getting to the big leagues, and you do something that is going to be remembered for a long, long time. So pretty gut-wrenching for the Giants, but I think the better story to be told was probably on the Mariners side. So that's what I did. I went and wrote it from the Mariners' perspective last night.
No, it was a great story. It really was, and it took the Giants' part as well, and that's what I want to get into a little bit with you. And I know things happen quickly with Rogers, 17 pitches, but you've got mound visits. You have a coaching visit if you need it. Walker's going to come in anyway if things go sideways, which they were. I just can't believe that Walker wasn't brought in before the tying run scored. I had trouble with that. What do you make of that? Did Melvin explain that?
I was on the other side. So, I just read what the other beat writers quoted him as saying, and I think it basically happened quick, and they didn't get anybody up until after the third hit. Now, a couple of things happened last night. One, they were going to bring in Jordan Hicks. Right. He was going to come in after Jelly, and then he had something in his arm that didn't feel so great. It's funny. I was watching him warm up last week at Oakland, and he was shaking his arm a lot because you warm up in Oakland, you're right out there where everyone can see you. And I thought, is there something wrong with him? Maybe he's got like a nerve issue or something's feeling a little funny in his arm. But then he went out and he pitched fine. So maybe it's something he's been dealing with, maybe not. Try to get a chance to talk to him about it this morning. We'll see if they even put him on the IL when they activate Camilo Doval. But they were going to go to him, and they didn't, and they went to Landon Roop instead. Now, I thought what they could have done in a 5-1 game is throw Landon Roop out there for a second inning because, the pitch count was pretty manageable after one, but they went straight from him to Rogers. And, you're counting on Rogers doing one inning, Walker doing in the next inning, but, maybe that's where Melvin felt a little bit short. Like he had to get a little bit of length from Rogers there, and it just didn't happen. But I'm with you. I think that's one where, maybe in a perfect world, you go back and redo it. You send Roop out for a second inning, and then you send in Rogers if it becomes a save situation. If you get in trouble, because at that point it was still a 5-1 game when Rogers came in.
Yeah, I just don't let it get tied up without Walker in the game. That was my feeling. I don't care how quickly it happened. There's ways to slow the game down. Which brings me to the next question, that is the catcher. And I brought this up in the open, and I'll say it again. The Giants need to do something bold. And there are reasons for not signing Elias Diaz from Colorado, who's an all-star, and he's been released. He hasn't signed anywhere. Well, we like Casale. We love the way he handles the pitching staff. Diaz doesn't know our pitchers, blah, blah, blah. So they get a guy who hasn't played in the big leagues in 2 years. They've done this a billion times in the last 6 or 7 years. Instead of being bold and saying, all right, we can't hit numbers 7 through 9, 6 through 9 in the order, they're zeros. Let's get a guy who maybe can hit. Let's be bold. Why not? And I just can't believe they wouldn't do that.
You know, I think your reasoning is sound there. I would tell you from a
I'm generally right.
standpoint,
You know that.
You're generally right, Marty. So here's the other thing that's complicating is you got to get the player. You got to get the player to say yes to a role that is going to be uncertain, even if you tell him, look, we're going to cut Kurt Casale. We're going to make you pair you with Patrick Bailey. Everyone knows Patrick Bailey is going to play a lot in September. I mean, he's got the best framing numbers in baseball. He's the most valuable defensive player in baseball by runs prevented, a couple of those metrics. And so he's going to play a lot. They think he's going to be back when his 10 days are up. And if you're Elias Diaz, you're a guy who was the All-Star Game MVP just a year ago. You're going to have some choices, and you want to go someplace where you can play a lot because you're playing for your next contract. And so I think the best the Giants could offer him was sort of a temporary space on the roster. Now, they probably could have offered him more than that, and they could probably use 3 catchers in September. I know you don't get the same number of spots on your roster that you used to when rosters expand, but to me, if there was a way to move the needle and convince him to stay by saying we're going to carry 3 catchers, then they should have done that. And maybe they did. Maybe that wasn't enough. I mean, great, you want 3 catchers on the roster. That doesn't mean you're actually going to play. And I think that he's probably going to go somewhere where he has a chance to play, minimum 3 times a week. I have a feeling that that's going to be out there for him somewhere, and check back. And if it isn't, then we can revisit these questions. But, I think that the opportunity the Giants had for him or what they envisioned for him or what they could promise him probably was a little light for what he might be able to do elsewhere.
Yeah, maybe so. Look, he's only got till September 1st to get on a roster to be eligible for the playoffs, and if that's important to him, to resurrect his career a little bit, this would be a good spot because he's probably going to get some decent playing time probably for the next 10 days at least. So whatever. But I just feel that it's something – it's like signing Chapman or Snell or any of these or Bryce Harper. Go the extra mile. It's okay. Be bold. Do something. So that's where I am with that. So, let's see how it ends up playing out. Andy, you mentioned Duvall will be back today. I think he will be back today. I know there's nothing official about it, but, boy, he served his time in Sacramento. It's time to bring him back. They need him.
Oh, well, certainly they need him, and I think that he was coming back regardless, even if they had a trouble-free end of the game last night. They weren't maybe a little bit short in terms of people. I think he was coming back regardless. And, look, they wanted, clearly they're not going to come out and say this, but they wanted to get his attention. They wanted to make a move that was going to really get his attention and help him understand that, hey, he's got to be ready to pitch in non-save situations. He's got to be ready to pound the strike zone, and be a little more receptive. I think that he'd kind of gotten away from a lot of the little things that are important to do when you're just a relief pitcher, not just a closer, not just the guy who has the fancy music and the light show and everything, but just a functional member of that bullpen and part of the team. When you throw coolers, when you come in after, you're up 10-2 because you're not happy to be pitching in that situation, it's not a good look. You're not being a good teammate. So, I feel like they needed something like this to get his attention, and they needed to see a little more strike throwing, and I don't think they needed to see it for a month. They probably just needed to see it for the minimum of 15 days and call him back up. And I think that's where they are. And now the question becomes, well, who's the closer on the team? Does Duvall slide right back in? Because Ryan Walker has been fantastic. He comes in last night. He's the only reason that game stayed tied, and then he strikes out the side in the 9th. So multiple innings, he'll be down today. So I think for today, I think there's little doubt that if there's a save situation, Duvall would be the guy. But, what do you do going forward when you have a rested Ryan Walker who kind of deserves the job at this point? So, it'll be interesting to see how they manage that situation.
Yeah, I'd put Duvall in the 8th inning. I'd let Walker close right now, and let Duvall work his way back into it. But he deserves to be on the big league roster, and you need him. You need him. Instead of Spencer Bevins coming in the 9th inning, you need Duvall coming in, even if it's not a closing situation.
Well, that's the other reason that I thought they should have kept Roop for another inning, because if maybe it's Bivens, maybe it's Roop, who they send out, but if you know that you're going to be sending out a pitcher, and maybe the Hicks injury changed things, and they're thinking he might be an IL candidate,
right.
But I'm thinking if they sort of predetermined that maybe Roop would be the guy to go down for Duvall, then I don't understand why they wouldn't have gotten a second inning out of Roop.
Yep. No, good point. Good point. A good story today, really. You wrote a good story, and it is from a little bit the Mariners' perspective, but it's a nice story about Dan Wilson, Edgar Martinez, and a franchise that has made one appearance in the playoffs in like 20 years, and they had it in hand this year in June, up by 10. Now they're trailing Houston by 4.5. I thought Laz Diaz was just awful last night. And now I'm going by the box and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's accurate, but my goodness, if that's not an argument for computer umpires, automatic umpire, whatever you want to call it, that to me would be what I would show the fans.
I think the most frustrating thing to pitchers, if you were to talk to them about the zone, is that it was inconsistent. They couldn't really know what was a strike or not. I mean, Eric Miller had Rivas struck out. That third pitch to him was a borderline pitch, but it did clip the bottom of the zone. He didn't get the call. There was one Tyler Rogers pitch to Rivas that was just right smack down the middle. And, I mean, Hunter Pence and Dave Fleming in the broadcast booth were kind of just agog. It's like, how is that not a strike? And, it wasn't strike three. I think it turned an 0-1 count into 1-1. But, Rivas is a guy who, he joked that when he chokes up, he basically grabs the barrel of the bat. He's a little guy. He's a back control guy, and he swings different with two strikes. And, that count leverage might have made a ton of difference. He took a more aggressive pass at it with a 1-1 count than maybe he would have with an 0-2 count. Maybe he doesn't get the base hit there. So, you hate to get too granular about the strike zone, whether it's a good umpire or bad. You can't let that affect the outcome. Both teams have to deal with it usually. But yeah, I agree. And especially when Tyler Rogers kind of throws his arms out, and he doesn't get the strike call, and Diaz immediately comes out of his crouch and throws his arms out. Like, what are you complaining about? Well, I'm complaining about a pitch that was right down the middle that you flat out missed. So I'm with you. I think there should be a challenge system at minimum.
Yep.
Where there's a clear cut miss like that, there can be a quick sort of intervention and get it right, because maybe the full automatic strike zone, I think, would come with a whole host of unintended consequences. You might have certain kind of pitchers with those certain kind of pitches that can clip the zone, guys with big, huge breaking balls. They might become more prevalent in the game. There's a lot of ways that I kind of have a jaundiced eye toward a full robot automatic strike zone. But I think that a challenge system really makes a lot of sense, and it's long overdue. And I think once the league knows this, and once they feel they really have technology and a good sound process for implementing this, I think we're going to see it in the big leagues. And hopefully it's by next season.
I hope so. And I've said this for years. They can put a rocket on Pluto. And you mean to tell me you can't tell me if a ball goes over the plate? It's incredible to me. But it's time. And I like the challenge system. I'm with you. I would do it next year. Chapman.
They have it in tennis. They have it in cricket. They have it in other sports.
It's ridiculous. Well. It's ridiculous. Whether the box is accurate or not, the box is there. And if the ball is outside the box and then inside the box, and then you get a call different ways, there's a problem here. There's a problem. All right, let's talk Chapman for a second. The Cron had a story this morning. I think Susan wrote it. Will they sign Chapman? She called Boris and all that stuff. Will the Giants go the extra mile to lock this guy up?
Potentially, but it's going to mean going the extra mile. I don't think there's going to be a hometown-friendly contract here. I don't think there's going to be. I would be very surprised if there's a contract that's negotiated that's not on the open market. And, there's a big difference when it comes to a Chapman, when it comes to a Snell. These guys have put in the time in the big leagues. In Snell's case, won multiple Cy Youngs. and they did not get the multi-year contract that most players only get, even the really, really good players who reach this stage, they only get one shot at that contract. And, we're talking about the 5-year plus type generational wealth contract. And, Matt Chapman's not going to sign another deal like the one he just signed. And Blake Snell is certainly not going to sign another deal like the one he just signed. They're looking for, the 5-year, 6-year plus contract. And the whole reason they're Giants to begin with this year is because the Giants were able to get them on, more favorable, shorter terms. And, but at some point, I think we talk a lot about continuity, and I think that the thought all along has been that this continuity is going to be developed from players within the system. And you want to try to keep the decks free as many positions as possible for players in your system to establish themselves as people who can really be around for years and years. But you point to a third baseman in the system, to me, who looks ready to take over at that position. I mean, if they don't re-sign Matt Chapman, well, are you moving Marquil Luciano there? Are you, you got to go out and get somebody else. So,
no.
This is a guy who he posts every day. He plays every day, and he's going to be in his 30s, and everyone's got an age curve, and we all know that. But I think at some point they got to put some big pieces of furniture in the room, and so they should have every motivation to sign Matt Chapman. And he's obviously very, very tight with the manager. I think he's a good conduit for the manager within the clubhouse. He's doing everything right from a defensive standpoint. Obviously, had a throw get away from him after making a really great play to start that 8th inning. But I agree with you. I think that the Giants should have every motivation to do that. And they have a player who wants to be back too. But it's Scott Boras, and it's a player who knows that he's in line to get a really nice contract, and I don't think they're going to be operating in a space where they're going to, in a closed space where they're going to negotiate this deal. I think I would be surprised if something were to come to fruition before he becomes a free agent.
Yeah, and look, he's not going to get $300 million. He's not getting $250 million. There is a limit on what the market will be, and he knows that, and they can meet that. It's not going to break the bank to get him, but they can pay it, and I think you're right. I think they need him. That's the other one for me. I want to mention to you is Ramos. He's hung in here the whole year. The league's adjusted to him. He's adjusted back and all this stuff. They pitch him high and away. They throw it, and he'll chase the spots we know where he chases it. But, boy, this guy comes to play, and he gives you an at-bat. He really does. And he's here. Ramos and Lee next year are 2/3 of the outfield for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And he'll hit his next homer, will be his 20th, and he'll be the first Giant under the age of 25 to have a 20-homer season since Pablo Sandoval in 2011. And, Pablo's a different style of hitter, a much, much more free swinger, a huge adjustable bat. He could do damage anywhere. But Ramos, I think, has a little bit more of a tighter window he looks into to swing. And, yeah, he can get, he can expand a little bit too. But for the most part, he's been really disciplined at the plate. And he just finds a way at least a couple times in the series to just hit one really hard. And, that ball he hit last night, I don't know if you followed traced it all the way to its finish, but it went up into the third deck. It took a hard bounce off a seat. It took a bounce off a guy's hands, and there was a little girl in a pink rain slicker sitting in the absolute uppermost row of the upper deck, and she ended up with the ball spinning around at her feet and picked it up. And I thought that was just awesome. That was really
fabulous.
There's no conceivable way that little girl thought she would get a home run ball that day, and that just tells you about how strong Elliot Ramos is. So that was, I thought, a kind of a cool moment, and he's having a cool season, and he's maintaining really good attitude. And
he shows up.
He shows up. He's like Chapman. You can pencil him in the lineup every day.
Yeah.
And even Tyler Fitzgerald, for as good of a season he's having, you see him have games where the consistency is not there. I mean, he struck out 4 times yesterday. He had a game in Cincinnati where he really said he couldn't trust his swing, and he struck out a bunch of times, and that's going to happen. He's going to have games like that. It's your ability to bounce back and not let that sort of become a cluster that really kind of separates players who can stick around. And And Ramos really hasn't had a whole lot of games like that, and when he has, he's bounced back fast. So I think that's something very, very positive the Giants can point to out of this season.
All right. I think Fitzgerald needs a day off. The guy plays every inning. He's the leadoff hitter. There's a lot of pressure on him. If he gets on base, he's got to steal. He's got to hit the ball out of the park. I think the guy needs a break. I really do.
Yeah, well, they just signed Kevin Biggio to a minor league deal, so that could be in the works. That could be something part of their thought process.
Yeah. He needs a break. I can see that coming. All right. What do you think quickly about the game today? Snell, I'll set the over-under of hits at 3. How about that?
Yeah, I think every game that this guy pitches is a no-hitter watch from the first pitch. And I can't think of even Tim Lincecum, he didn't feel that way about him. So it's been pretty remarkable. And, the Giants, I think they would have traded him if they'd gotten a very, very compelling offer from a team. And honestly, it's all these teams' losses. It's the Orioles' loss. It's the Padres' loss. It's every team that is trying to make a run, the Astros. I mean, you're telling me that you couldn't add Blake Snell and that would make you feel so much better about your ability to take down a short postseason series, but we don't have Brian Sabians in the game anymore. Everyone's too risk averse. There were no prospects in Baseball America's top 100 that were moved.
Amazing.
You tell me, was Brian Sabian remembered for giving up Zach Wheeler for 2 months of Carlos Beltran in a year that didn't work out? No, of course not. He's not remembered for that because he did other things that helped him win 3 World Series. And, I think that's why the Phillies are well served to have the guy in charge they've got, Dave Dombrowski. Yep. You have executives who just have some boldness to them. And you make some mistakes, and sometimes you make catastrophic mistakes, and you give away a prospect who turns into a really good big leaguer. Well, guess what? That's why you develop a dozen more of them. You hire people who are good at that.
It's like planting a crop every year. As I say, they plant they're going to get 20 new ones next year. Trade them.
Yeah. So for me, the criticism within the game is that there just aren't more risk takers, and I don't blame the Giants for. I don't blame the Giants for holding on to Snell if it meant that they were just going to get a couple of B-level prospects for him. It's better to hang on to him and sort of hope that maybe this rotation can be as good as they thought it could be in the second half, and maybe they have a run in them. Obviously, it's not working out that way. It's still, quite a bit of baseball to be played, but not a whole lot of confidence that they're going to be capable of being a postseason team at this point. But you can't blame them for holding Snell based on what the offers were. And honestly, if there's criticism, it should be that there weren't offers that really made them think hard about trading him.
Yeah, no, I agree. Very good. Well, great to talk to you. Good article today. I'll look forward to reading you tomorrow morning in The Athletic. Extra, thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Have a good weekend.
That was a pleasure. That is Andy Baggarly. Boy, one of the best. All right. More coming up right now. Glenn Kuiper is going to join us right after the break. All right. More coming up right here on the Sports Leader. Joined by Grant Power. He is the president and CEO of Nations, and Nations is now franchising. Grant, let's get an update on that.
Well, Marty, we've sold 8 franchisees, and we actually have one business group that's on the verge of purchasing another 6. So we've got some great momentum. Our dream and our goal is to do 1,000 stores nationwide. But to get there, you've absolutely got to nail the first 10 or 15 with great franchisees. And we are obsessed with seeing those first 10 or 15 franchisees succeed. We are really emphasizing markets that are adjacent to our current stores in Northern California. So in other words, we want these to be 10 to 15 of the best nations that have ever existed.
Grant, how does someone get in touch with you to get started?
So my cell phone number is 510-612-0036. I'll say that again here, 510-612-0036. They should call me personally. We're a family company. We're looking to add people to the family. These are the juiciest opportunities out there. If somebody has any kind of interest or any kind of drive for running restaurants and they want to be a part of a 74-year-old company that's striving to have a very ambitious and exciting decade, this is really an opportunity that you can't miss.
That's Grant Power, President, CEO of Nations. All right, great to have you back with us. Joining us is Glenn Kuiper. Glenn, good morning. How are you today?
I'm good, Marty. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Boy, you watch enough baseball in your life, which you have, and you see a game, you say, this one's over, and it's not over. What a game. What a game.
I know, and I felt the same way because Tyler Rogers has been so good this year. I don't want to say automatic, but he's been terrific. And how often against any guy does a team get 6 consecutive hits? It just hardly ever happens now with offenses down. But, he's not a strikeout guy, and a couple balls find holes, a couple balls bloop in, a couple balls get hit hard. But you just don't see that in a big league game hardly ever. And it happens so fast. I know there's a lot of talk. Should Walker have gotten in there sooner? But, boy, it really did happen fast. And it was disappointing. I don't know, Marty. I'm afraid this whole thing's getting away from the Giants here. I know that's probably not a genius thing to say, but it's just games that they really should win. And in the last 2 weeks, you look back and there's just games where they just should have won. I think, the last game against the Tigers, and then the 2 extra inning games against the Braves, which I think were the 2 losses that are probably going to hurt the most. But it all comes down to just not getting that big hit, and it's an ongoing thing now. So there's a lot of frustration, and quite frankly, there should be, because there's a lot of games in the last 2 weeks that they should have won and that they did not.
So what do you do if you're Bob Melvin? And look, you've watched Bob Melvin manage for years. Probably you know him better than anybody. Does he stick with a starter too long? Does he not change those relievers often enough? What happens with him?
Well, I don't. No, I mean, I've always thought Bob was really good at handling the bullpen, and that hasn't changed. I know fans are chirping a little bit about the last couple of weeks where recently maybe you should get a guy out of there sooner. I don't. Listen. I know everybody wants to get Ryan Walker in there as soon as possible for obvious reasons. I mean, he's unbelievable, right? But, listen, I mean, last night Tyler Rogers has been one of your best relievers, and he still is – you still always think he's going to get a ground ball. He's going to get a ground ball. If Chapman makes a good throw to the first hitter in the bottom of the 8th inning, there's one out and nobody on base. Maybe that whole inning's different. So, I don't want to go right to the Bob Melvin is not doing a good job with the bullpen, because it was all set up last night. Your 8th inning guy who's been excellent, Walker in the 9th who's been terrific, and the game's over. But it just didn't work out that way. Could he have gotten Walker in the game maybe a hitter or 2 earlier? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, there's probably an argument there. But it did happen fast. And it happened so fast, I just don't even know, you're sitting there waiting for Walker in the 9th. It's all set up perfectly. And now you got to get him up quickly in the 8th inning. So I don't know. I just don't think Bob Melvin's the guy that you dump this on. Listen, again, I'm going to go back to it, Marty. They should have scored more than 5 runs. I mean, yeah. It's just head scratching how they have struggled, just simple offensive fundamentals of just put the ball in play. I mean, you cannot, Marty, strike out 18 times in a 10-inning game. You just can't. You're not going to win that game. I'm sorry, and it's just frustrating. But I don't know how that's going to automatically change in the final month. That's just not the way it works.
Well, I will say this. Wade looks like he's hitting again. He had a good night last night. Boy, the ball travels to center field there, doesn't it?
Well, yes, center. Left center, right center is big there. But for some reason, the ball does jump a little bit to center field there. I'm not sure why. It's a great ballpark. I love it. It's one of my favorite parks because it's you got what we call the canopy over top, but it's still open air, and that may help the ball carry a little bit. But I know left center and right center were always pretty big. You get it down the line, you're fine. But it did look like last night, there was some carry to center field. But terrific ballpark, and I think it's still, even though it looked like it was carrying last night, I think it's still a great park to pitch in because of the dimensions and the weather. It's always nice and cool there, and it's a great place to play and to watch a game.
I like it. I've been there. I was there last time I was there, I think, for the All-Star game up in Seattle with Ripken. I remember that. A-Rod and Tommy Lasorda went over backwards. It was crazy.
Yeah,
but
that's right. I do remember that. Couldn't get down on the ground ball. It was a routine play, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, I like it. It was a beautiful park.
You got to make that play.
I had a nice time up there. What do you do with Duvall? He will be here today. You make him the closer again? Where do you put him?
No, I would not do that. I mean, I think Walker deserves to be the closer. I mean, I really do. I mean, he has been unbelievable. I mean, the stuff he's throwing up there, Marty, I mean, this is A-plus stuff now, right? I mean, terrific slider and 97 with a fastball, and he's throwing across his body, which makes it very difficult. His release point then becomes different than anybody else's. So, no, I think Walker deserves to be right where he's at. And, I think Duvall, hey, put him in there in the seventh inning. He's still an all-star last year, and he's still a big part of the future, I believe. But he just needs to get a little confidence back. I think that's a big thing with him. Just get some confidence back, and if it comes in the seventh inning, fine. If it comes in the eighth inning, that's fine too. I would not take Walker out of the closing spot. I think it's his. He deserves it. He's been great in the short period of time, and there's no reason why Duvall can't get this stuff back and be a real good reliever again. In fact, I think it probably will happen. Maybe a little wake-up call for him. But I would keep him in the seventh inning or maybe the eighth inning, somewhere in there.
Well, I said yesterday on Twitter, and I know it was a tough loss last night and things didn't go well. It should really have been a win. But they do have, 3 with Seattle, and Seattle, the worst offensive team in 60 years, and the only one worse are the White Sox when we saw them. Then it's off to Milwaukee, and their starting staff is like 24th in baseball. Great bullpen, and the Brewers pretty well. Then all of a sudden you get the Marlins in with the worst pen in baseball. And then you get Arizona in, who hits the heck out of the ball, but they're very left-handed, and the Giants do have left-handed pitching. I thought this little 12-game stretch could be good, and still could be good for the Giants.
Yeah. I mean, this thing's not over yet, but what happens, Marty, is the schedule gets short and you start to run short of games, and that's why you just cannot give up wins, and that's why I think to me these last 2 weeks have been incredibly frustrating. They really have, because I mean, I'm going to go back to it. The last game against Detroit, the 2 extra inning games to Atlanta, and the game last night, I think you can make a really strong point that they absolutely should have won all 4 of those games. And if they would have just executed offensively a little bit, they would have won all 4 of them. And that's why the frustration is there, because now you're running out of calendar is really what is happening. But I agree with you. There is still time. And you need help, right? The Mets and the Braves have to lose. We get all that, but you need to show some urgency here, because there's just not a lot of time left. You really can't make any mistakes now, really, for the rest of the year.
Boy, there's good stories in baseball. Look, the Ramos home run was crushed, and the third deck there. That was Mark McGwire territory in the old Kingdom up.
Marty, what stood out to me, and you're gonna laugh, but I think you're gonna agree with me about that game last night. And we're talking about, the Giants just not being able to get a big hit, not being able to put the ball in play. I thought the last step out of the game, the kid who got the base hit to win the game. If you watch that at bat, right now the game is on the line, runner at third, 1 out. What do you just have to put the ball in play, right? That young man was choked up. And I was thinking, you know what, this kid's not going to strike out because he had choked up, he had fouled off a couple tough pitches. He was, you could tell he was intent on putting the ball in play. And he hit a pretty good pitch to center field off of Miller, right? Kind of a backdoor slider, it looked like. But his intent was really simple. I got to put the ball in play. And he did. He just dropped a single into center field. But he put the ball in play. And that jumped out at me right as I was watching that at-bat. I said to myself, you know, this kid, he's going to be a tough out. And Miller's got good stuff, but he's choking up. And you could just tell the way he was going about the at-bat that he was going to do everything he could to put the ball in play. And that jumped out at me right away because we had just watched the Giants strike out 18 times. and if you put the ball in play, good things can happen. And the young man for the Mariners, he did exactly that. Choking up, game is on the line. I'm not going to strike out. I'm going to do everything I can to put it in play. And he did, and the Mariners won the game.
Boy, great insight. Very good. No, you're right. And the kid's been hot the last couple of weeks. He's been one of the better hitters. He's the only one who hit it all against the Dodgers. Boy, Seattle, they're dead in the order. There's nothing happening in that batting order, I'll tell you that. So yeah, the Giants really let one get away last night.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got Snell today and Kirby today. This is a good matchup. I said the over/under and hits against Snell. I'll put it 3.
3. No, just that right there tells you how great he's been. But I just think we're going into Milwaukee, and the Brewers are pretty good. And I know you mentioned the starting pitching's been a little bit of an issue for them, but they're still pretty good. I think you absolutely have to win the next 2 days. I mean, you just can't. You cannot lose series.
No,
because you're automatically going to lose some games in the standings, and so huge 2 games here in Seattle, and you know I get more and more concerned every day. But it all goes back for me. It just all goes back to the inability to offensively just do the little things to get runs across, and they just continue to strike out in difficult situations, and that has to stop, and I just don't know if it will.
Boy, very good. Great to talk to you, Glenn. Yeah, Giants 4 for 20 in the last 2 days with runners in scoring position. All right, we'll talk to you next weekend. Look forward to it. Have a good week.
Okay, Marty. We'll see you, bud.
All right, be well. That is Glenn Kuiper. John Leonidakis joins us. John's been on with us before. John's got a very special film about Lefty O'Doul, and there's another about Ty Cobb, and they're going to be shown today. And, John, I wanted you to come on the show today and let the fans know about the films and where they can see you and the films today in San Francisco.
Well, thank you, Marty. It's great to be back with you and your audience. The event is today at the San Francisco Main Library, 100 Larkin Street in Civic Center. We get going at 1 o'clock. We are showing 2 films. And, by the way, it's free and open to the public. Everyone's invited, Giants fans, A's fans. Let's get our baseball on and have a great time. We're showing 2 films. One is about Lefty O'Doul's incredible 1949 tour of Japan. It really flew under the radar, and it was a tour that changed the course of history. And so we're going to be there also with special guests, Tom O'Doul, Lefty's cousin, and Mr. Tadeo Kunishi, who grew up in Tokyo and attended 2 of those games in 1949. So they will be on hand to share that with us, and we can talk about the Ty Cobb film in a moment. I just wanted to give you a chance, and I wanted to thank you, Marty, for being one of the many incredible interviewees for the project. You know, Dennis Snelling, the author of the excellent bio of Lefty, has participated along with Tom and Tadeo, as well as Steve Treader, a fantastic author who did the Horace Stoneham biography, Kirio Nakagawa. We have Mike Murphy from the Giants, yourself, and we've also interviewed San Francisco Chronicle columnist Carl Nolte. So we've got a heck of a lineup.
Wonderful. I love it. And that's at the library, the main library today. What time? 1 o'clock, you said, John?
1 o'clock in the beautiful state-of-the-art Corrette Auditorium downstairs.
Fabulous, fabulous. I appreciate you being on. And we'll catch up again, but I'm glad to have you on today. Look, Giants have a road game, so if you're looking for the baseball fix today, so to speak, the main library in San Francisco's got it with John Leonidakis. John, thanks for being with us. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Marty.
All right, good. Glad to have John on. He does a nice job. And the films are terrific, and I've seen bits and pieces of them already. Very well done. We're doing a little giveaway today for Joe Sheehan. The Joe Sheehan newsletter. Joe's going to be with us later on in the show. But I do this every year, and I take care of the subscription to his newsletter. It's the best in baseball. So email me, Marty Lurie, MartyLurie, at yahoo.com, and let me know if you want a year's subscription, and we'll take care of it. It's really good, and you know Joe is one of our best guests, so please do that. Don Granera, Granera, has emailed me, but for some reason it has not come through, so resend your email again. All right, more coming up. Bruce Jenkins next, right here on the Sports Leader.
When the game is over, hear the post-game wrap with John, Dave, Kruk, and Kite on KNBR and KNBR FM, San Francisco.
Fans, nothing better than spending an afternoon at the Priest Ranch Wine Tasting Room in Yountville. You can relax as you enjoy a selection of limited production estate wines paired with local artisanal cheese and charcuterie. Your host will guide you through each unique pairing while sharing the incredible story of Priest Ranch. Now, while you're there, you must try the food at our new restaurant, The Kitchen at Priest Ranch. It's right next door to the Priest Ranch Tasting Room and serves amazing, fast, casual food. That's an afternoon. All right, great to have you back with us as we get ready for Giants baseball today. Joining us, Bruce Jenkins. Bruce, how are you this morning?
Good, Marty. How you doing?
Well, pretty good. And, boy, I'll tell you, it was 5-1 last night, and I sat down. I said, all right, it's time to maybe check out the Priest Ranch wines and relax.
Some of those cheeses sound pretty tasty, Marty.
Really, and the charcuterie. Come on,
yeah.
You know? And what happened? Oh, my God.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was really depressing. I mean, to see, it's the first time a Giants pitcher had ever given up 6 hits without getting an out, like ever. And they just kept raining hits and hits, all singles. And next thing you know, Walker saved the day, but then it gets down to the 10th, and the Giants couldn't get the guy in. You got to get that guy in from second. You got to get at least one, right? And then Rivas, smart bit of hitting against Miller. He just punches one up the middle. And the Dan Wilson era is underway in Seattle.
Did you think Schmidt should have tagged up on the play that Rodriguez came in and dove for that ball? What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of a toss-up, but yeah, I think so. I mean, it's just always good to be aggressive when you're in the Giants' position. You don't want to make a dumb mistake, but I don't think that would have qualified.
Well, JT Snow, and we love talking ball with JT, he said that Schmidt, he just texted me, Schmidt should have tagged up, and JT says with nobody out on a fly ball, you always tag up. With one out, you go halfway. I learned that in high school. So it's a point we hadn't made today on the show, but maybe Woe and I will talk about that tomorrow. But the little things, Bruce, it's these little things of baseball that keep getting the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, when you get 3 home runs, homers from Wade and Conforto and Ramos, and you're up against Castillo, I mean, you've got to win that game. But they struck out 18 times, for heaven's sake. And that's just so brutal. And there were a lot of little things. A steal of third by Moore ahead of the winning run. And it seemed like it was all going to be okay, but I just keep thinking about Birdsong and how good he was coming out of the gate. He threw curveballs and changeups that any pitcher would be envious of. I mean, just unhittable stuff. All of a sudden, though, he couldn't find the plate. With the fastball, he's losing his command, and you can't keep him in there. It's just really a shame. That's kind of been his pattern, and they're going with him because his stuff is so good, and he's a good kid. But it's tough when you can't get through, the middle innings with the guy, especially when it comes out that strong.
Yeah, he may be tired. He's 22. There is the pressure of just being in a pennant race, so to speak, with the Giants, because when he's missing, it's like his release point is all over the place.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the tired arm syndrome.
Yeah, that's a good sign of that, sure. Or if a guy keeps raising his arm up over his head or whatever, a little body language can tell you that. I don't know. He's awfully young to be tired for my money, but he's you can get tired. Stress can make you tired. It's not like you're running a mile, but when you're losing your stuff and you're a little bit stressed out, and that can create a lot of things that you don't want. So, but the bottom line, Marty, they're 5 games out of the 3rd spot, but it's really 6 because Atlanta has the tiebreaker. And they're 6 out in the loss column right now to Atlanta. I mean, they're tied with the Cardinals and the Cubs. Those basically tied. Those 2 teams could pass them up. So it's really looking not good.
No. This little 12-game stretch, I thought, maybe they have a shot here to do something, but it just seems like something happens every day. They lose to the White Sox, they lose to the Tigers. Those are games you just have to win. So we'll see what happens today. The Hicks thing bothered me a little bit. The fact that he felt something in his arm, and you've taken a kid who's never been a starter. Really, you make him a starter, then it's too many innings. Now you make him a reliever. I hope there's nothing wrong with him. That'd be disastrous if he needed Tommy John or something like that.
Oh, my goodness. That would be a complete nightmare, especially for him. But, yeah, I guess maybe they'll get some word on that today. They're taking an MRI on him. But, yeah, they're holding your breath on that one because he's a valuable guy out of the bullpen. And, last night, next thing you know, they're down to like the next guy is Bibbins, and that's it, because they had to hurry into the bullpen a little too early. And, Rogers couldn't get it done. Walker was fantastic. He has been fantastic.
Yeah.
And, Duvall is kind of in limbo right now, so they got a lot to work out.
Yep, they do. Duvall should be back today, I will tell you that. But, boy, there's drama in baseball, and I love talking to you about this stuff. And I'll start with Aaron Judge. Bruce, 49 home runs already, and we haven't hit September yet.
Yeah, well, he hit 62 a couple of years ago. He passed Maris and Ruth and everybody else in the history of the Yankees, which is just, that's an astounding thing that doesn't get played up enough. And he's looking that way again. He could hit, maybe he hit 63 this year. But what I love about it is that teams are competing against him. They're not just saying, well, don't ever pitch to him, just walk him. That's not competing. That's cowardly to me. Obviously, you have to walk him in some situations, but, the odds are in your favor that you're going to get him out. He's not hitting 800, and teams are competing, but he's just really stepping up. The pinstripes can weigh awful heavily on guys, but he's not one of them. And we talk about the Triple Crowns in his reach. He's hitting 333. He's going to win the homers. He's going to win the RBIs, and I like the Yanks in general. Soto's been fantastic. Stanton is back and homering. When they get Rizzo back, and their pitching's looking pretty good. So that's a tough call for the Orioles. But Aaron Judge, he's going to be tough to pass in the MVP. I'll tell you that.
Well, for people who were not around for Maris and Mantle. Judge and Soto remind me of Maris and Mantle. They really do.
Yeah, and they all the great Yankees going back to Ruth had the advantage of that short porch down the right field line. It's a whole lot different story. The center field, it used to be like you couldn't even see the fence. It was so far through the monuments. But that right field porch, and you give Judge credit, it's an opposite field hit for him. Opposite field stroke. He does the same thing Derek Jeter is doing. Just poke one out there, man, and he's strong enough. That ball's going out. And Maris took advantage of that. Mantle, of course, he was a Judgian kind of power guy who hit balls that you couldn't even find him. They're out on a railroad track somewhere. But that was really, really dramatic. I don't think people are framing it quite the way we are right now. But I think they will if this keeps up. It's exciting to watch because Soto is a complete showman. And why he would think about going anywhere else, I don't care what Scott Boras says or what No, you're a Yankee now. If you don't get that, that's a real shame.
No, he will be a Yankee. There's no question. And they'll pay. See, this was my argument with the Giants. And, you got to be bold. You've got to pay. And, look, if you don't pay in today's game, you're not going to get the players. And if they want Chapman, if they really want him, and it takes 150 as opposed to their offer of 120, you got to pay it. And the Yankees will do it. They understand that.
Yeah, Chapman's a great example. I mean, he's one of the few Giants who is legitimately great, like top of the line at something. Among the position players, he's so good defensively that it's just a treat to watch every single game, and he does enough hitting to justify you keeping him there. And I think he likes the Bay Area enough to where they offer him what he thinks is a fair amount. I think there's a good chance that he stays. I don't know if they don't make the playoffs and the season ends in depression and what the hell and what are we doing. The vibe around the team might be different, but right now I think at least they have a fighting chance of signing him, and they do have to pay him.
Yeah, they should, and it's not going to be $300 million. You know, it's not going to take that.
Right.
It's going to be a reasonable figure instead of the Judge money or Soto money or Harper money. It's something crazy, and if it's an extra $20 million, that's the way it goes. That's the market, and you got to do it. You got to do it. You have to do it.
They've got the money. Yeah.
Yep, they do, and spend it. All right, I'm glad we could spend it for them. I want to bring this up. You were featured in the Chronicle this week. We lost to Al Attles, the former coach of the Warriors and just an icon of Warrior basketball for, my God, 65 years or so. But you wrote about him a few years ago, and they reprinted it, and you were the man this week to talk about Al Attles, and I wanted to bring that up with you.
Oh yeah, geez. I mean, truly a remarkable man. You know, lifetime Warrior, coach, executive, player, and about as great a wonderful gentleman as you could ever meet. Always dressed impeccably, and you talk to him, and he's kind and generous and knowledgeable. And I did have some great talks with him several years ago. You know, before he got a little distant with his speech and was forgetting things, as we all do. I know I forgot a lot of things already today, but and meanwhile, one of the toughest individuals ever to come into any sport. He never started a fight, but oh my goodness, did he finish some. Guys talk about him in reverential terms, but I just loved talking to him about Wilt, you know, who's a teammate of Wilt's and knew a lot more about Wilt Chamberlain than most people who were playing against Bill Russell, and he was always extremely humble, but this is a New Jersey guy who didn't think he had any chance to play in the NBA. And next thing he's in the Philadelphia camp, and well, I can hang with these guys. You know, I know I'm as tough as they are, and he was a pretty good ball player. So that's a big loss. I mean, he represented the Warriors in so many ways for so many years, and never a hitch. He was someone, a universally admired man, a great man.
Yep, and I've had him on the show, a good baseball man as well. And I know we've got somewhere in the archives my interview with him, but we got to know his wife, Wilhelmina. She was a teacher up in Montclair, and believe it or not, my son Aaron, she was his teacher in the 3rd and 4th grade.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so, and one day, Alvin Jr. comes to the class, and he brings a friend with him. And they're talking to the class, and the friend is there, and they introduce him just as a friend. And Aaron says, "Wait a minute, I know who you are. You're Thunder," because he recognized the guy's sneakers, and
wow.
That's Aaron's claim to fame. He busted Thunder in the 3rd grade.
Something not many of us can say, Marty.
No, that is Aaron Lurie's claim to fame. He knew it was Thunder from the sneakers. So, but they're a wonderful family and wonderful family. So I'm glad that we could talk about that. Very good. Ohtani, my goodness, you talk about drama. How about drama? You could set this one up. Go ahead.
Well, he's closing in on 40-40, right? And there's only about 5 guys who ever did this, 40 homers and 40 steals. So in the same game, he gets the 40th steal. Then he gets the 40th homer on a walk-off grand slam. I mean, unbelievable. You know, nobody's ever done 50-50. In fact, nobody's ever done 45 and 45. He's going to do that. And he might get to 50-50. Yep. It's amazing. I mean, Bonds is in that group. The one guy who really stands out in the 40-40 is Acuna, because all these other guys, Canseco and A-Rod, Soriano, they were all stealing in the 40s. Acuna did it with 73 steals, so that's like the all-time 40-40. But Ohtani is just he's just ridiculous. You know, he was in a really bad slump, and he got down below 300. I just don't see that lasting. We talked about his stance and pulling off, and sure enough, he said, "I've got to work on my posture when I'm hitting," and you can see that he's done this. I mean, I don't think anybody even was aware he was slumping that badly because he's just such a presence. But the Dodgers are they're feeling a little more comfortable now. And Ohtani is just, what a fixture. You know, they got Muncy back, which is enormous. He came right out homering and doubling, and Kershaw goes today, I think, tonight against Tampa Bay. If they get Glasnow and Yamamoto back, they'll be better than they've looked in quite a while, I would think.
Yeah, and the other guy we've talked about, and we've been following him for about 3 or 4 weeks now, is Lux. Gavin Lux he's like Muncy. You know, they're a little left-handed oriented once again. You know, we'd get Freeman, Ohtani, Lux, and Muncy, but they're hitting. They're starting to. The Dodgers are starting to hit again. You know, there's this epidemic in baseball. If you look at hitters 6 through 9 in the lineup, nobody can hit. Nobody can hit, I'm telling you. And if you have a deeper lineup like maybe Arizona's got, and San Diego has to some degree, and the Dodgers to some degree, you stand out. You stand out because there are too many teams that just don't hit.
Yeah, Lux was like a legend in the minor leagues. His numbers were so good, and everybody's watching for him. And he came up, and he had a throwing issue which set him back some, and he wasn't hitting the way he could. And he doesn't have a great stance at all. His knees are way too bent, and he drapes the bat over his shoulder. Those are two things that just doesn't. It's not a good look. Of course, you know, a lot of other guys have done it, and it works. And all of a sudden now he homered like 4 times in 8 games. He is a good hitter, and he's fitting in there. That's a huge thing. It's like you say, the bottom of the order with Kike, and you know they don't even have Jason Hayward anymore. Pius was sent down. They're kind of struggling there, but you know, a guy like Lux is a little bit of a late bloomer in terms of the big leagues, but he's looking for real right now.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the Brewers this week, to see Churio, see what he looks like. Terang, the second baseman, their bullpen is really good. Starting rotation not so good, but they turn balls in play into outs for the stat people. Milwaukee is a team. They put away the Central. How about that?
Yeah, I mean they haven't had Woodruff or Wade Miley, and the ace might be Freddie Peralta. Somehow they're getting it done, but it's a relentless lineup. That's a pretty deep lineup, and you know with Adames is a monster. Churio's having a great year. He'll be in the Rookie of the Year with Skeens and Merrill and Tyler Fitzgerald. And Terang is very fast. He's got a bunch of steals, and Hoskins hit one out against the A's yesterday. William Contreras, and the legend of Sal Frelick in right field. You got to love Sal. He'll cater for you too. He's got the post-game spread all set up for you. That Sal Frelick's joint. So I like the team. I don't know how they're doing with the pitching, but Devin Williams is a phenomenal closer, and that makes a big difference.
Yep, they're getting it done. This is going to be that Myers is the pitcher. The Giants are going to get him next week.
He's been good. Myers,
yeah, he's been really good too. A lot to talk about. We're going to talk about more tomorrow, but one historical note today: Ernie Banks, 1971, hits homer number 512. Boy, Ernie Banks typifies Chicago baseball in the 50s. An African American player in Chicago, breaks the color line, Gene Baker. But Ernie Banks was a heck of a ball player.
Oh, man, he really was. In the late 50s, it was such a golden era for the National League. You can run down the list of all the great players they had. This guy playing for fifth-place teams both years, the Cubs, no kind of team at all, wins the MVP 2 years in a row. He was a really good shortstop. You'd have him and Eddie Matthews on the left side of the infield in the National League All-Star game. Homering, playing a really good shortstop, prince of a guy. And historically, that 512th homer is big because it takes him out of a tie with Melott, and Miguel Cabrera's at 511 also historically, but it also got him even with Eddie Matthews.
Yeah,
at 512. So, at the time, there were only 9 guys who hit 500 when he hit his 500th a little before hitting number 512. But, this guy, I mean, truly amazing player. He was getting a little old when the Cubs finally got good in '69 and gave the Mets such a good run. He was still a great player, but not quite what he has been. He was playing first base and everything else, but he goes way back to the Negro Leagues and being touted by Cool Papa Bell and Buck O'Neill, playing for a team out of Detroit that was a feeder for the National League team called the Colts. He was playing for this black amateur team as a high school sophomore. He was already playing shortstop for this team, and next thing you know, he's barnstorming around with Jackie Robinson and Campanella and Larry Doby, and just a tremendous. Never played in the minors. He had such a reputation coming out of that. He signed with the Cubs. He went into the Army for a couple of years. He showed up with the Cubs, and 424 games later, he still hadn't missed a game.
Wow. Well, he is Chicago baseball, right?
Yeah.
He is Chicago Cub baseball. Let's play 512 home runs. I'm glad you mentioned Eddie Matthews because he is tied with him. Boy, I'm glad that we could acknowledge Ernie Banks because with the integration of baseball after Jackie Robinson, you see what the National League had in the 50s and 60s and why they were the dominant league.
Oh, my goodness. One of those years when he and Matthews are the left side of the infield is 1960. The team also had Mays, Aaron, Stan Musial, Cepeda, and Clemente. I mean, come on now. I think Clemente,
right.
maybe not Clemente, but yeah, it's just ridiculous stuff. I still remember waiting for that All-Star game. I was a little kid, a Dodger fan, National League City, and those games. It's not like today. Let's put it that way. And those games, those guys that usually played the whole game. Or Mays, you're not going to take Mays out. I know that.
Boy, the beauty of baseball. Boy, very well said. Terrific. All right, we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay, thanks, Marty.
All right, terrific. Boy, that was good. All right, Jean Fruth joins us. We've had Jean on a number of times. She is the best photojournalist in the country today. She's got a new project coming out. It's See Her, Be Her. Jean will talk about it when we come back right after this. Another year of baseball, America's favorite pastime. Baseball is rich in tradition, it's full of history, and so are the Georgie brothers. They've served the Bay Area for over 90 years. The 50,000 square foot showroom, which I mention all the time, is full of some of the finest manufacturers of furniture, carpets, and window coverings. Now, here we go. One of the most popular furniture lines that I love, you know it, is Stressless. Stressless makes high-quality, comfortable furniture, including sectional sofas, love seats, single reclining chairs, as well as the famous Stressless chair and ottoman, and that's what I got. Starting August 9th and running all the way until August 26th, there's a new Stressless promotion. We call it the Wing Promotion. During this sale, you'll receive a $500 instant savings on every wing-style chair and ottoman in Paloma leathers. It's an unbelievable savings. This is one of the largest sales events Stressless Furniture offers throughout the year. So that's Georgie Brothers. It's Georgie Brothers Furniture. The showroom is in South San Francisco, the best source for home furnishings. Visit them at georgiebrothers.com. That's GIORGIBROS.com. And remember, tell them that Marty sent you. All right, it's Blake Snell today against George Kirby. How about that? This is going to be quite a matchup today with these two teams. 32 strikeouts yesterday, 18 by the Giants, 14 by the Mariners. So this is a pitching series, regardless of what happened in the eighth inning yesterday. Giants let one get away. Jean Fruth joins us. Jean is the best photojournalist in the country. We've had her on. Does such nice work, and she's got a new project out. Jean, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Marty. I'm doing great. Back in the Bay Area. It's kind of rainy and San Francisco weather.
All right. Well, you've been all over the world. We love following you on Twitter and Facebook and all different places. But you've got a new project out now. Tell us about it. See Her, Be Her. I think it's very timely.
Yeah, See Her, Be Her is the story of 7 women baseball stars who are at the pinnacle of their game, Marty. They're from all over the world, the United States, Canada, Japan, Puerto Rico, Cuba, South Korea, and Uganda, where women play baseball in 8 regions, believe it or not. So this project is a documentary, and I have a companion book coming out with it, and it's taken over my life. But yes, it's very timely, and this is probably the most exciting project I've ever done in my career.
Well, it's timely, and I always say whatever happens in the world happens on a baseball diamond, and I've done it in AmericanInnings.org, and I've tried to do it there. This is another one in the world today with the status of women, and we have a woman who's running for president, and the Olympics just happened, and the excitement of the WNBA. Women in baseball all over the world. I didn't know they played baseball all over the world like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're not alone. I mean, so many people, when I tell them about this project, they say, you mean softball, right? And I say,
right.
No, women play baseball. And you're right, it is timely. Look what's happening, look what's happening in the world. Look what's happening in our country. We have a woman running for president. We have teams, professional teams for women in basketball, in hockey, in soccer. I mean, we're making such great strides for women's sports. And baseball is, kind of a little bit behind or a lot behind, but we need a voice for them and a platform. And my hope is this documentary shines a light on them and they enjoy the successes in the future that other women's sports have had.
Jean Fruth is with us, Fruth. See Her, Be Her is the project. But what sort of obstacles do women have in playing baseball in Uganda or in Puerto Rico or Korea?
I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, first of all, the high level of play. I just got back from shooting the Women's World Cup. And yes, there's a Women's Baseball World Cup that happens every 4 years. And there was 25 teams, 25 countries participating. So there's 25 countries in the world that have national women's baseball teams. And these women play baseball, and they play at an incredibly high level. And the semifinals went down to 12 teams, and just the finals were 6 teams left. And it came down to, interestingly enough, USA versus Japan. Just like our World Baseball Classic did, USA versus Japan, just back in March. So quite interesting that we had the USA and Japan women's teams battling it out, and Japan won a gold medal, and they won for the 7th time, which is interesting because women's baseball in Japan has really been a little bit further along, or a lot further along than the USA. And the USA had a powerhouse team. I mean, these women are hitting home runs, and they're playing. I wish you could see it, Marty, and you will. I can't wait for you to see the film, the level of play that these women are at. And they just need support, and they need a pipeline. In Japan, women they play high school baseball. Ichiro Suzuki plays a game against the girls' high school all-star team each year in November at the Tokyo Dome, and he gives them a platform to help raise awareness of women's baseball. So there's great stuff happening in different countries. South Korea has 50 women's teams. They don't get paid like the men's teams, so they have something to fight for. But 50 teams in South Korea is pretty incredible. So there's progress being made. In Uganda, where baseball is new to the country, The Little League, there was a Little League team that went all the way to Williamsport for Uganda boys team. And now the girls are playing, and there's 8 regions in Uganda where girls are playing and women are playing baseball. They do not have a national team yet. Very hard for them with being one of the poorest nations in the world. And they certainly have issues, but baseball raises these women up and gives them hope and gives them all. In Uganda, it's connected to school and further education. So a lot of cool things happening with women's baseball in Uganda.
When will we see this? How will we see the documentary?
The documentary is coming out this year during the 2024 World Series, and it'll be shown on the MLB network between games 2 and 3, which is terrific because that's the audience, right? Like, that's the audience who needs to see this and who can help these women.
Wow. Gene Fruth is directing it and co-producing it with Jeff Idelson, who has always been a good friend and was, of course, the president of the Baseball Hall of Fame. So you and Jeff are doing this, and I imagine let me ask you this question. Where do you see women's baseball in the U.S., let's say 10 years from now? What would it look like?
I really believe 10 years from now there'll be a professional league for women. I mean, perhaps it'll be tied in with the Major League Baseball for men. I mean, why not have a women's San Francisco Giants team and have them play in minor league parks? I mean, I believe it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I certainly would like to see it sooner rather than later.
Wow, I can't wait to see it. Everything you do, Gene, is always first class. So it's see her, be her. And in between games 2 and 3 of the World Series, we'll be able to see it on the MLB network. Well, thanks for coming on, as always. And I always appreciate hearing from you. And I'm glad to discuss your projects anytime. So I appreciate it.
I so appreciate the support. And the book will be on seeherbeher.com as well, Marty, and I'll make sure I send you a copy.
Okay, let's say that again. So seeherbeher.com, and that's where the books will be.
Yes.
Fabulous. All right. Thanks, Gene. Have a good day. Best of Jeff.
Oh, terrific. Oh, thank you so much. Take care, Marty.
All right. Bye-bye. Gene Fruth, boy, she's good. It's a great project. Boy, 10 years from now, that would be interesting. Why not? You know, look what the WNBA is happening, and why not? I think it's great, and I'm glad that Gene is doing this. All right, more coming up. Joe Sheehan is going to join us. Don't forget, if you want a copy for the year of the Joe Sheehan newsletter, I'm going to take care of it. Just send me an email, Marty Lurie, MartyLurie, @yahoo.com, and I'll forward that on to Joe, and you will get his newsletter for a year. But he's coming up. We're going to talk some ball with him, as we do every couple of weeks, right after this. Everyone likes a party, but everyone loves a party at Original Joe's. With 3 private dining rooms, it's the perfect spot to hold your next big event. From christenings to corporate gatherings, we'll make your next party San Francisco special. Original Joe's, see you at the counter. Vans Bridge Bank delivers their clients full relationship banking, including treasury management solutions and global market services. Bridge Bank offers financing solutions to businesses for their working capital, equipment, and real estate needs. This is very important in today's world. Fred Voss is the Senior Managing Director of Bridge Bank's commercial lending efforts in Northern California. He has commercial banking teams in San Jose with Jesse Garcia, San Francisco, Oakland, Cheadle Cordova, and in Pleasanton. Bridge Bank, it's like banking at home. I can't say enough about it. Well, the Giants need one today, and they've got the right guy on the hill today, and that is Blake Snell, who has just been awesome last 4 or 5 starts. You know the numbers, boy, as I look at them very quickly here. 4 starts in August, 28 innings, 12 hits, 4 runs, a homer, 9 walks, and 40 strikeouts for him. George Kirby, other than getting lit up by the Tigers here, has been terrific all year long. He is a good young pitcher at 26, so this is going to be a good game today. Joe Sheehan joins us. I've been talking about Joe all morning, about his newsletter, joesheehan.com, the best newsletter in baseball. And, Joe, glad to have you with us. How are you today?
A little jealous of you, Marty. That's going to be a great game today. I'm a big George Kirby fan. Love the way he pitches, love the way he attacks the zone. So should be one of the better pitching matchups of the month there.
What happened to George Kirby? I think, wasn't it the Tigers? Someone lit him up like for 12 runs. What happened?
Well, Scott Service left him in really long that day. I was watching that game, and I was a little surprised to see how long he was left in the game. But a lot of it was just contact. One of the issues that Kirby has is that he make the argument almost that he throws too many strikes. And one of the things he's tried to work on, Saras has written about this, has been throwing more pitches out of the zone. Like you get to 0-2, hey, throw the waste pitch, throw the chase pitch, try to get the strikeout, try to get the weak contact. And Kirby's a guy who wants to pound the zone. So we've seen pitchers like this, extreme strike throwers. Think about Bob Tewksbury in his heyday. Think about Kurt Schilling at the end of his career, guys that throw that many strikes. They are prone to occasionally get knocked around. So it was a fluke, I would think, and I don't expect that to happen too often to him.
All right, let's. I like the Tewksbury comp. That's very good, very good. Yeah, he was the strike thrower. Wow. Arizona, San Diego look like they've sort of settled into those wild card spots, and who knows? The Dodgers have had a resurgence this week, getting Lux back, and Muncy is back, and all of a sudden Kopech is the new Mariano Rivera. But let's talk about this wild card race. The Giants are still in the thing. They're 5 back, and your Cubs, I have to hand it to you. Maybe if you're staying long enough, maybe they'll get back in it. They're only a game under 500. So let's talk wild card a little bit.
It feels more and more like there's just the one spot everybody's playing for, right? You got the Braves holding it, the Mets right behind them, and the Cubs and the Giants chasing. I keep waiting for the Diamondbacks and Padres to slow down a little bit, and they're not. But Diamondbacks went into Fenway last night, hung a 12 spot on the Red Sox. The Padres just keep chugging along. They got Joe Musgrove back. He actually looked great against the Mets on Thursday night, I think it was. And the offense just keeps on going. I'm really surprised by both teams' offenses. Now, the Diamondbacks, they're missing guys. They're missing Walker. They're missing Gabriel Moreno, and they're still hitting well. They got this rookie catcher, Adrian Del Castillo, who's just gone absolutely off the first couple of weeks of his career. The Padres, we talked about this lately. Last year, they had that incredibly bad record in one-run games, 9-23. They couldn't win extra inning games. You look at the splits, they hit poorly with runners in scoring position, extremely poorly. And they basically caught up to all of that this year. They're one of the best teams in baseball in high leverage. They've gone from the worst to the best, and that's driving them. If you look at the overall numbers, pitching, hitting, all of it, they're playing actually a little bit worse than they did last year. But they're winning the close games because they're playing well in high leverage spots. So, I still think we're going to see this race tighten up a little bit, whether that means the Mets, the Giants, the Cubs, who's to say. But I don't think the Padres and Diamondbacks will continue to score this many runs down the stretch.
What about the Mets? And you got to see them this week. You were at Citi Field to watch a Met game. They're hanging in there 2.5 back. You're right. Musgrove gave up 1 hit against them the other day. What about the Mets?
Yeah, one of these teams that's pretty complete lineup. You go through them, and they really don't have any bad hitters. That's one of the things I like to see. The Brewers have had that this year, too. When you've got Francisco Alvarez batting ninth or Harrison Bader batting ninth, these guys are average, maybe average minus hitters who aren't going to hurt you going around the bend. There are so many teams right now, Marty, that have just terrible hitters in the 7 through 9 spots. So the Mets have an advantage there. They've suffered a ton of pitching injuries. Senga came back for 5 innings, got hurt again, so they're kind of taking his rotation spot. Christian Scott looks like he's probably out for the year. Power rookie right-hander who looked like he was going to be a big help for them. So the rotation's an issue for them. They just keep coming up with relievers, though. It was Reed Garrett early in the year. Then it was Daniel Nunez, who came up in June and pitched really well. And I got to look at Jose Butto the other day, who's really a starting pitcher who's been used out of the bullpen for them. And he's been great, too. Mets player development, I don't think they get enough credit. We think about them signing Verlander or signing Scherzer or trading for Lindor and spending a bunch of money. But player development's been a real asset for them on the course of a decade now. And you look at the core of this team, yes, Lindor, make the argument that he was money, but remember, they traded talent to get him in the first place. But the rest of that core is homegrown.
I thought the Giants should have gone after Diaz, the catcher that Colorado let go. Is Diaz worth it? And I know they got involved with Andrew Knapp, and they love players like him. And I said they had to be bold and get a major leaguer in here and juice up this offense a little bit. Would Diaz be worth it?
I mean, he's somewhere between average and replacement level. He's not somebody you miss getting. Obviously, he had the big hit in the All-Star game a couple of years ago, won the World Series MVP. He's had a couple of years where he's hit for average. But overall, the skills are he's better defensively than he once was, particularly in framing. I don't think he's somebody you worry about missing. I guess it's Casali and who'd they call up to replace Bailey?
Andrew Knapp.
Knapp, yeah. I'd rather have Diaz than Knapp. Knapp's basically been a sub-replacement player for his entire career. Diaz would have been a better choice there. But, your backup catcher isn't really going to affect how your season plays out. Their season's going to come down more to whether they can hit. And this is a team that has a 290 OBP in August, Marty. As good as the pitching has been, the 8th inning of last night notwithstanding, it's the offense that's really hurting them there. You just can't run an offense with a 290 OBP.
No. Let's talk Atlanta a little bit. And they had some tough – every game they play is 3-2. They've got so many people out that they don't score much. You want to talk about 7 through 9 in the order. They don't do anything, really. But this Gio Urshela all of a sudden showed up, and he's a Gold Glove third baseman for him, and he gets some big hits. But Atlanta is hanging in there at a time when I thought Atlanta was going to fall apart.
Well, they have upper-level depth. They don't have a lot of internal depth. That's why they keep bringing in guys like Urshela and Jorge Soler and all the guys that have to go out and get. But when healthy, Sale, Fried, Morton, Schwellenbach is a really good rotation. They just got Reynaldo Lopez back this week as well. So they've shifted from a team that tries to beat you 6-3 to a team that, as you say, is trying to beat you 3-2. They're very much a pitching team right now, pitching and defense team. They got really lucky. The Tigers dumped Urshela. They want to try to play some of the younger players, but he's basically an average player, as you mentioned, a plus defensive third baseman. So when Riley got hurt, there was this gift out there just waiting to plug in. Urshela is exactly the guy you plug in for 2 weeks, and he's just not going to hurt you. Might come up with a big hit here and there. But again, it's actually a defensive upgrade over Riley at third. So, again, the Braves, this is not last year's Braves team. They still might miss the playoffs because they struggle to – I mean, you're talking about playing Ramon Laureano and Jared Kelnick, and it's just a whole bunch of waiver bait on that bench around Olsen and Osuna. And Olsen's not even having a good year. This is right now Osuna running the team. So it's just a really bad offense at this point.
Yeah, I think it's still in play. I think that third spot is still in play, and that's why I said this 12-game stretch here, and the Giants get the Marlins with that terrible bullpen. Arizona is very left-handed offensively, and the Giants do have left-handed pitching. And Milwaukee. Let's talk Milwaukee, though, because that's coming up next. This is a team that defensively looks terrific, and they just seem to get it done. But if you ask me about their rotation, the Giants are probably going to see Myers, Peralta, and Savali. Come on.
That's the thing about this team. They've made it work all year with really a below-average starting rotation. Strong and deep bullpen. I gave Craig Counsell a lot of credit over the years for what he did with those Brewers bullpens. Well, Pat Murphy has inherited the job and done just as good work. These no-name relievers like Joel Payamps and Brian Hudson and Jared Koenig are all they've all been very effective this year. They've had to throw a lot of innings because the starters, not only are they not very effective, they don't work very deep into games, even with the addition of Savali. They also traded for Frankie Montas at deadline, but Montas is a number 4, number 5 type starter. In basically every playoff game they play, they're going to have the worst starting pitcher. But they get away with it because you mentioned the defense. I was just reading Mark Simon this week talking about how great their defense has been. And with Yelich out, now they're going to miss Christian Yelich. He's out for the season with a back problem. He was one of the best hitters in baseball this year. But it enables them to play an outfield that includes Perkins, Frelick, and Churio. That is basically 3 center fielders out there. And Churio's been fantastic for 3 months now. You got to look at him. I mean, he struggled at the start of the year. They didn't give up on him, and he's basically been a 300 hitter with power now for 3 months. So it's young legs playing really good defense and a strong bullpen, and the rotation is basically there to get you to the 5th.
All right. Boy, it's great to talk to you. By the way, we're giving away a year subscription to your newsletter on the show today. Marty Lurie, MartyLurie at yahoo.com. So just send me an email, and I'll forward it to Joe. So, Joe, I'm glad to do that for you.
Appreciate the promotion, Marty. And listen, you should giving out the free newsletters. I'll provide a full refund for anybody who doesn't like it.
Okay, come on. It's terrific. And the gaming newsletter is fun. You've been very good this week. You're in the plus column, and you've been doing it all year long. It's not easy to pick baseball games, I will tell you that. Let's talk a little bit Aaron Judge and Ohtani and what they've accomplished in a year where offense is still missing in baseball.
Yeah, this last week was very strange. It was April-type statistics for an entire week at the end of August. Things bounced back a little bit last night, but it was very strange. But then you have Aaron Judge actually having a better year than he did 2 years ago when he hit 62 home runs, and he's just been a monster really since the start of May. He was actually bad in April. I remember writing a story wondering if there was an issue with protection is generally a myth, Marty, but it will cause your walk rate to go up. And at the start of the year, it seemed like Judge was pressing because he wasn't seeing any pitches. Apparently, he got over that. So he's been fantastic for a while now. Going to be an interesting MVP race in the AL. Bobby Witt is doing incredible things, and he's a shortstop. And there's a really big difference between being a plus defensive shortstop and an adequate center fielder. So we've got a month to sort all that out. But there's a real chance that Judge gets to 60 again. They'd be one of the, Sosa, McGuire, and I believe those are the only 2 players to hit more than 60 in a season.
How about Bonds?
Bonds' second best season, I think, was 47 because Bonds walked so much. Especially after he hit 73, he was only getting like 400 at-bats a year because he was being walked. I mean, one year he had 120 intentional walks. So, yeah, it was 73, and I think his second best year was 47. So, yeah, Judge just doing historic things this year, a ton of fun to watch, and, really an easy guy to root for. Speaking of easy to root for, of course, Shohei Ohtani, getting to 40-40 with a walk-off grand slam. I mean, if you actually presented that to somebody in Hollywood, hey, I want to make this movie, they'd throw you out of the office. But just a bomb last night with the bases loaded to get to 40-40. The earliest, I think Sarah Langs had this, the earliest anybody had ever gotten to 40-40 before. He has a chance to go 50-50. And I'll tell you, buddy, I remember, 35 years ago now, when Canseco showed up in spring training talking about, I can go 40-40. And it had never been done before. And he did it, and players have done it since then. And if I had said to you at the start of the year, somebody's got a shot at 50-50, like even after seeing what Ronald Acuna did last year, which was 70-35, I believe, I don't think I would have given anybody a shot at 50-50. And you have a chance now for Shohei Ohtani, who's already done so much in his 7-year career, to go to a place statistically that nobody's ever gone before with a 50-50 season. So really just amazing, and kind of opens the door to the question. Now, he always had, when he was pitching, he had a pretty big split between when he was pitching and when he was not pitching in terms of how well he hit. And I guess what we're seeing now is, what if you just let Shohei Ohtani only hit for a year? This is what you get.
Boy, what a story. What a story. What do you think about the game today? Snell and Kirby, who do you like today?
The under? I don't even know what to say. Yeah. Probably 5.5. I haven't actually looked yet. I don't think I think it's going to be a fun pitcher's duel. We don't get – that was the conversation we just had last week, right, about making the starters stay in longer and why don't the starters pitch. We could today get that old-style pitching duel. We talk about the Giants and their issues against right-handers. Kirby pounds the strike zone. Snell, of course, on this incredible run right now against the Mariners team that, again, the eighth inning notwithstanding, isn't scoring a whole lot of runs lately. So, yeah, this could be a fun, old-fashioned pitcher's duel.
All right, this is going to be good today. All right, your dark horse team, the Cubs, they're 5.5 back, and in the loss column, 6 back of Atlanta, so they're still hanging around. My Kansas City Royals, only 1 back of Cleveland. Come on, man. I'm telling you, Pasquantino, he's the guy.
Well, the Guardians collapse is really a story here. They've lost 13 out of 19. And, this is the thing all year. They've been overplaying their underlying. So they had a better record than their underlying performance all year. So that's eventually going to change. 6-13. Their team, Marty, if they're up 3-0 in the fifth, they're probably going to win. But if they're down 3-0 in the fifth, they're almost certainly going to lose. They just can't generate enough offense to win high-scoring games. So they've got to get ahead and put the game in the hands of that incredible bullpen. This week Marty, I forget off the top of my head where it is. But the Royals and Guardians play a 4-game series. It's actually a doubleheader on Monday. And that is going to go a long way towards determining the American League Central.
Fun. Boy, great to have you on, Joe. Appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Very good. Enjoy it.
Thanks, Marty. Take care.
All right, that is Joe Sheehan, joesheehan.com. If you're interested in the newsletter, I'm going to take care of it for a year. Marty Lurie, MartyLurie, at yahoo.com. I'm glad to do that for Joe. He works really hard doing this. More people, the better. All right, Carrie Crowley joins us. Carrie, good morning.
Good morning, Marty. I'm sitting here in studio, rare studio appearance, looking straight across the glass at RAF right now. What a morning. Right. How are you? All
right, very good. It's been quite a last, 12 hours or so, whatever it was. I was ready to have my piece of butter cake and, and enjoy dessert from Original Joe's and have a glass of Priest Ranch wine and drive over to River Islands, and it all fell apart on me.
Exactly. I was ready for a beautiful morning, eating breakfast at Nations, looking into a franchise. But you know what, Marty? Right now, I think that we all need to reconsider where we stand, huh?
My goodness. I mean, come on. 5-1 on Seattle. It's the 8th inning, and I know things happen quickly, and I've said this on the show, and I'll say it to you. I was waiting for you to come on because then we could get into it a little more. Mm-hmm. You can't let it happen. You can't. I don't care how fast it happened. You got mound visits, you got coaching, you got this and that, you got Walker. You cannot let Tyler Rogers give up the tying run 6 hits in a row. It just can't happen. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. I don't even have much more to add to that because I think you speak for everyone. Anyone who watched that game understands the failure that it was. Anyone who's watched the Giants over the last 2 weeks sees the missed opportunities. You go back to the Atlanta Braves series, the 10th inning on Monday, the 10th inning on Tuesday, the Chicago White Sox series, where Logan Webb comes out and the Giants don't have an answer in the 9th inning. Ryan Walker, it wasn't going to be his 3rd day in a row. I don't quite get that one where Walker's not pitching the 9th inning of a game at home on Wednesday against the White Sox. Maybe it was a calculation that the White Sox are so incredibly bad, but the Giants showed once again last night. The Seattle Mariners have one of the worst lineups we've ever seen, Marty. This isn't a team that can string together 6 hits. It's a team that relies on, a timely home run here, a couple of doubles there. 6 hits in a row. I can't imagine the Mariners have had that all season. So I just don't know. I'm out of explanations for this team.
Well, when the Giants lead after 7, which they did last night, their record is now 50-4.
Oh,
so
goodness.
That's how crazy it was last night. And, maybe it's the fact that the starting pitching, look, this is the end of August. We played 130 games, and the starters don't go very far, and the bullpen's been used and used and used and used. And, and it's sort of at the end here, and you've got to really pull it together. And without Duvall around, it was a big blow not having him. And now Hicks felt something in his arm. And I said, look, they made Hicks a starter, then they made him a reliever, and now his arm doesn't feel so good. No big surprise, but that's not good for the Giants either.
Not at all. Not at all. And I think that you brought up a really important point, and I don't want to gloss over this because I think every Giants fan should understand it. Camilo Doval was the closer of this team, and then he was sent to AAA Sacramento. You can't tell me he goes from being the best pitcher in your bullpen to the 9th pitcher in your bullpen, where you don't have room for him on the Major League roster. If you've got to get Camilo Doval right, maybe it happens in the 5th inning. Maybe it happens in the 6th inning. Maybe it happens when you're losing 13-2 against the Atlanta Braves on Wednesday night. But you don't send him out for 15 days and take away one of your 8 best relievers. He doesn't suddenly plummet down the depth chart to 9th for the San Francisco Giants, which is where he was when they sent him to AAA Sacramento. That makes no sense to me, and it has cost the Giants the last few weeks because if Camilo Doval can come in there and take a 7th inning or take a 6th inning, it means that maybe you don't have to send Tyler Rogers out there for his Major League leading 65th appearance. Maybe you don't have to extend Ryan Walker for 2 innings in a game that you ultimately lose. The Giants have now set themselves up, Marty, for a further decimated pitching staff as they come down the stretch here. And we've seen this story in 2022, 2023, and we may see it again in 2024 or in September. I don't know if you've looked ahead at the schedule. Next 12 games are interesting. The 18 after that are concerning. The Giants are going to be in a real pickle when those teams come up ahead of them.
Yeah, I thought this 12-game stretch they could, and they still may. I still think they match up, but the pitching is not quite as dramatically good as I thought it was going to be. And look, when you go 4 for 20 against the White Sox and the Mariners with runners in scoring position, it's going to kill you.
Yeah,
and they've done this since the break. They just can't get that big hit. And Glenn talked about it this morning, about choking up on the bat and controlling the strike zone and just trying to drive those runners in and put the ball in play. When you strike out 18 times, it's a 10-inning game. There's 30 outs, and of the 30 outs, 18 of them are strikeouts. That's 60% of your outs, and then there's some ground balls, a couple of fly balls. You're not doing any damage.
Yeah. I mean, the organizational approach clearly needs to change. And that's been evident since the end of the 2021 season when the Giants, they hit the 3-run homer that year. They hit the grand slams that year. They hit a bunch of home runs. It was a National League leading total. It was the most in franchise history. But 2022, 2023, 2024, it's been the same story where runners get in scoring position and they can't come through. And they can't come through because the approach never changes. It's a bunch of guys trying to get off their A swings because that's what they've been taught through the organization, whether they come in as a free agent, whether they come in as a trade acquisition, or whether they're drafted and signed and developed by the Giants and then coming up and making their debut at the Major League level. They all have the same approach, and it's approach that in the 8th, 9th, and now we've seen it acutely in the 10th innings in recent weeks, Doesn't work. It doesn't work against a guy who throws 100 miles an hour like Munoz does. It just, something has got to change in these situations, right?
Yep. That's what the game has turned into. So we'll see what they do. Conforto had he's having a decent season. He doesn't play all the time, but 14 homers, had a nice one. Ramos is an outfielder. I talked to Andy about Ramos. I think Ramos, for me, has been terrific. He's got his next homer will be his 20th. He shows up every day. He's like Chapman in a way. And look, this is really his first year of establishing himself. He's been terrific, and Lee comes back. There's 2/3 of an outfield there. And Wade, I guess the legs are really bothering him because he doesn't run that well, but he got into a couple last night and did a nice job. What do they do with Wade over the offseason? What happens at first base here?
They've got to seek an upgrade. And I mean that with all that Lamont Wade can give you as an offensive player in terms of his plate discipline, in terms of the way that he sees pitches and how he sets up the lineup when he's at the top of the order. He does a really good job in those situations, but they have to seek an upgrade. It would be settling for what they've settled for the last 3 seasons, which isn't good enough. And I think that they have to seek upgrades up and down the lineup. You know, you mentioned Elliot Ramos and Jung-Hoo Lee. I can't wait to watch those two next season in the outfield together. I loved your conversation with Extra Bags this morning. It was great. They've also put themselves, and this is something that Bags talked about with you, in a situation where they have to re-sign Matt Chapman. They have to go out. There's no third baseman in this farm system who's ready to take over in 2025 or 2026. Matt Chapman and Scott Boras can demand a lot this offseason from the Giants, because even if someone doesn't want to pay Matt Chapman $90, $100 million next year, the Giants are going to be forced to, because Matt Chapman's smart enough to look at this farm system. Scott Boras is smart enough to look at this farm system and the rest of the free agent market, and they know that it's Matt Chapman or it's nothing over at third base next year. And so I think it's interesting. Lamont Wade Jr. is yet another conundrum that the Giants are going to have to confront this offseason, because in a nutshell, he's good enough, Marty, but I think he's more of an 81-game player. I think he's more of a platoon player, and I don't know that you can continue to run him out there because of the knee issues, because of the hamstring issues, because he gets banged up over the course of 162 games, and I think you have to account for that.
No, at first base, you need production. You need production. You just do. And, Rhys Hoskins was out there, and I thought maybe they should have taken a shot at him, and he's had a good season with Milwaukee. He's probably going to be a free agent again, I think. But they got to think about that. They got to think about Pete Alonso.
Absolutely.
They've got to be bold. And I think I made that point today, and I sound like Dieter now. They've got to be bold. And a bold move would have been picking up Diaz to catch.
Yeah.
And as Joe says, look, you're not bringing in Yogi Berra or Roy Campanella, believe me, or Buster Posey, but you are bringing in a major leaguer as opposed to someone who caught in the big leagues 3 years ago and is a great story. And maybe he'll run into one and get a hit. Be bold, create something, get some excitement, give some hope, and they just wouldn't do it. They won't do it. And then they fall back on, well, he doesn't know the pitching staff, is this and that. We can't guarantee him a position. Well, let me tell you something. There's not going to be any position to talk about in about 2 weeks if they don't start to hit. And I think they should have gone out and made the bold statement to Diaz, even if it didn't work, if it meant Casale was DFA'd or put on the IL until September 1st, whatever it meant, I would do it. And I'm sorry they didn't do it for those reasons.
And it goes back to the trade deadline as well. I mean, they made some bold decisions in their mind to keep Blake Snell and to offload Jorge Soler, but all they did was put their team in a further predicament at the trade deadline, because the pitching had to be perfect down the stretch. And they've been really good. Blake Snell's been really good. Logan Webb has been excellent. But the 3, 4, 5 slots in the rotation have been a question. And the lineup, Jorge Soler was getting hot in June. He was getting hot in July. He had an 800-plus OPS in each of those months. They then said, okay, we're turning things over to Marco Luciano. And how did that work out? I mean, the organization has no conviction in Luciano. It's very clear to me that he'll be traded this offseason, and he'll be traded at a value that's much lower than it would have been if he'd been traded last offseason. And so if that's how they felt about him, Marty, I just don't know. But there's been no conviction whatsoever in Marco Luciano. They don't want to play him. They don't bring him up. And if that's the case, where do they go from there? Because you made your lineup worse, and you also made your pitching staff a little shorthanded by getting rid of Alex Cobb. So they can fly the banner of financial flexibility, which is what they can do after that trade deadline as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there's plenty of games left, and they still pitch, and I still think they match up pretty well, believe it or not, with Arizona, with all the left-handed pitching they have and the lefty hitting there. The Marlins are coming in with a terrible bullpen. You got to go to Milwaukee, and I wish Buster Posey was still playing. He loved hitting in Milwaukee. But, they've got 2 more with Seattle. They should win these next 2 games. They should be able to outscore Seattle. Even some offense should beat Seattle. So, I still think they're still in the middle of it. It's just they're letting some opportunities get away, and you need that little spark somewhere, and you need Duvall.
Yeah,
you need Duvall back in.
You
here.
needed Duvall, unfortunately. I think that's the real story here. Is you needed Camilo Duvall, and they didn't. They didn't allow themselves a chance to work through it. That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Right. Well, it's all the mosaic.
Exactly. And they're still part of the mosaic to be formed.
Trust me, believe me. With 32 to go, this is the beauty of baseball. If you pitch go down the stretch and the pros take over. So let's see. Let's see what happens.
32 to go. So what is it? 21-11. They've got to go, Marty.
They've got to get to 80. Well, they got to get to 85 at least.
I don't know. I mean, you look at the Atlanta Braves and the New York Mets and where they are. It might take 86, 87 this year. The Braves are 10 games over 500 right now at 69 and 59. The Mets 67 and 62.
Well, the Braves win every game 3-2.
They do,
and that's not going to work. I'm sorry. Iglesias is the best thing going right now as a closer. But every game is 3-2.
Well, it's better than losing 3-2, which is what the Giants do every day.
Other than Ozuna, they got nothing. That's it. That's it. So the Braves, to me, are still vulnerable. They still are. And the Mets, I've never been a big believer in the Mets. I haven't. So we'll see. Mm-hmm. We'll see. There's still action here.
Oh, absolutely.
Arizona's, there's still action. All right. How are things with you?
Going well. In studio. It's the sun's coming out after the rain this morning. I loved driving in, listening to the show, listening to you, Extra Bags, Glenn, and of course I always love the segments with Joe Sheehan. I think that Joe, like you said, has the best newsletter in baseball, and so that's always a fun one for me.
Yeah, if you want to get it, send me your email.
You'd think by now that we would have traded emails, Marty. I think we've only been doing this since 2017.
What's your last name again? What's your name? Kerry what?
Yeah, exactly. We'll find out one day.
Kerry Murphy, is that you? That's
something like that. There's only a few Irish combinations you can figure out.
All right, we'll come up with something. But Marty Lurie at yahoo.com.
Oh, perfect.
Joe's a lot of fun. I love having him on.
That was a great segment.
He's good. All right. What do you got cooking this morning? Anything special?
Nothing special. We're going to roll right through, talk about last night's game, and look ahead. Look ahead at what's to come down the stretch and the big decisions that the Giants are going to have to make. I do want to pick at the discussion that you came up with Extra Bags about Matt Chapman and where the Giants go. And exactly. And how that's kind of emblematic of where the organization has been for the last few years. So I'm going to talk about that a lot this morning.
Yeah, and my feeling, we're not talking $300 million.
No,
so it is in today's crazy world of monopoly money in baseball. There is money out there for him within the Giants.
Absolutely,
not crazy. It's not crazy money, but they need him.
Yeah,
and he shows up every day.
He plays every day.
He shows up every day, and if you can help him in the batting order, he's fine. He can't be your guy.
Yeah,
but he can be, if you can help him around him, he can do some damage.
He's fun to watch. And how many Giants players who they've acquired have we been able to say that about for the last 3-4 years? Not many.
I like Lee. Lee's fun to watch.
Lee's very fun to watch. But we only got, 30, 40 games of Jung-Hoo Lee this year? I can't wait to see Jung-Hoo Lee next year.
Yeah, it's going to be good. All right, good to talk to you as always.
Always.
Family, how's the folks?
They're out riding their bikes around San Francisco right now. So listening this morning. They said, you're going in, we're going out. That's what they said.
All right, good.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Carrie.
Thank you, Marty.
All right, that's our show. Back with you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for Game 3 between the Mariners and the Giants. And coming up now in our Giants warm-up is the great Carrie Crowley. What a pleasure. Have a good day, everybody.
I have to say, for as brutal of a loss as it was for the Giants on Friday night, it's been a fun morning listening to Marty, chatting back on our Talk Back segment. Giants send Blake Snell to the mound today in Seattle, up in his hometown against George Kirby, Mariners right-hander who's been very good this season. George Kirby is fun to watch, in my opinion, as any pitcher in the American League. He's 9-9 with a 3.40 ERA this season, 148 strikeouts, but he's got a great four-pitch mix. He's really fun, and he's going to be a tough out for the Giants today. They've got to get Dan Wilson, the new Mariners manager, to make some tough calls today. You know, they hit Luis Castillo around last night, 5 runs off Castillo. Hayden Birdsong doesn't give up a run in 4 innings. And you think, okay, if that's the case, and for as bad as the Mariners lineup is, Giants have to come out with a win. They don't. They fall back to 500. And folks, they'll be fortunate to finish at 81-81 this season. The schedule gets really difficult for the Giants in the month of September. So as Marty said, they've got to win today. They've got to win tomorrow. They've got to capitalize over the next week. Milwaukee Brewers and then the Miami Marlins. We'll talk so much more about that and the state of this Giants team. 500, hovering around the midpoint all season long. I'll get into that and what it means for the Giants into September, what it means for the Giants in the future when we come back. We got a great show for you this morning. Giants warm-up as the Giants get set to take on the Seattle Mariners up at T-Mobile Park. I'm Carrie Crowley. More coming up next. You're listening to KNBR, the sports leader.
Miller ready. Runner at third, one out. The pitch. Base hit to center field, and the ball game is over. The Seattle Mariners have a win for their new manager at the expense of the San Francisco Giants, who looked like they had themselves a win, carrying a 5-1 lead into the last of the 8th inning.
Sometimes you got to let it play. It hasn't felt like such a dramatic free fall for the San Francisco Giants, but what we've witnessed over the last 2 weeks, I think we can say they have fallen out of the race. 32 games to go, 5 games out of the third wild card spot in the National League. They sit at 500, 65-65 through 130 games this season. Great work, by the way, by Raph, our producer, bringing that up, mixing that in with the final call from last night's game. But it really hasn't felt like this dramatic, hey, falling off of a cliff moment for the San Francisco Giants. It's just been every time you've needed to see something to convince you that this season might be different, that the Giants might find a way to climb up above 500, go on a run, get themselves back in the race, compete with the Diamondbacks and the Padres and the Braves and the Mets. They've done the exact opposite. Every test that they've had to pass the biggest moments of the season, they have failed, which is why this 2024 season is trending toward failure. We can't call it a failure yet because they're not mathematically out of it. But if you get to, say, September 24th and they're 5 games out of the wild card, a month from today, we will be calling the 2024 season a failure, and it will be the biggest failure of the Farhan Zaidi era. Again, not there yet because there's still enough time for the Giants to defy all the odds, to show us that the final 32 can be different than the first 130, that what you saw last night is behind them. It's in the rearview mirror, that they can be a different team because they have the pieces. Blake Snell, who starts today, is excellent. Logan Webb has been outstanding this season, will once again get Cy Young Award votes this year. Tyler Fitzgerald's been a great story at times. Elliot Ramos, Matt Chapman's a solid player. You go through the list, and individually, there are a number of Giants having a good season. Individually, there are a number of great stories this year. But somehow, the sum is worse than its parts. Somehow, all of these individual stories add up to a completely uninspired and mediocre team. Somehow the Giants, after spending $200+ million last offseason, upping the payroll to record levels of the Farhan Zaidi era, are exactly where they were before. And so, do I believe that they'll make the playoffs? Absolutely not. Do I believe they will go on a run? No chance. But I can't say today that this season is already a failure. It's just trending that way. And it's trending that way for a number of reasons. But I think you look at last night's game as an example of what has happened at the biggest moments of the year. And I go back to 2 weeks ago when the Atlanta Braves were in town on Monday night. The Giants don't bunt in extra innings. And they don't come through against Raisel Iglesias, one of the best closers in all of baseball. They lose that ball game. Tuesday night, 10th inning, Tyler Fitzgerald, hottest hitter on the team up at the plate, and they do try to bunt. Makes no sense to me. Makes no sense whatsoever to change your strategy when you were committed to swinging away with a lesser hitter than Fitzgerald. And then suddenly, the next night, you want your best hitter to bunt? Doesn't add up. We're looking at a ball club that lost to the Chicago White Sox on Wednesday against a team that, quite honestly, is one of the worst that's ever been fielded. The Chicago White Sox are atrocious, and I think they would admit that they're atrocious. I think they would admit that they're embarrassed by the baseball that they've been playing this year. And somehow, they go on a ninth-inning run against the Giants, and they win 6-2 on Wednesday. Logan Webb throws 8 innings of 2-run ball, and the Giants lose a game against the worst team, maybe the worst team ever. And they come back on Friday night. They're up 5-1 against a lineup that can't buy a hit. A lineup that will be on no-hitter watch when Blake Snell takes the mound today because, quite honestly, the Seattle Mariners lineup is on no-hitter watch just about every day. They're hitting about .216 this season. And they strung 6 consecutive hits together against Tyler Rogers. They probably haven't strung 6 consecutive hits together all season long. And it happens when the Giants hold a 4-run lead, when the Giants are trying to prove that they can get back into this race in the National League, when the Giants are trying to suggest that the final 32, 33 games will be anything different than what we've seen from the first 129, 130. And so did it surprise me? No, it didn't surprise me. Did it surprise me that it was Tyler Rogers? A little bit, but at the same time, no pitcher in baseball has made more appearances since 2019. Last night was his 65th time entering a ball game this season. 65 times. He's on pace to make about 80 appearances, which, oh, by the way, he did in 2021. 68 last year, 68 the year before. He's already at 65 this season. And so if Rogers' arm is tired and he's elevating, I actually get it. I don't put a whole lot of that blame on Tyler Rogers. I put it on the roster construction. I put it on the manager. I put it on needing Tyler Rogers 65 times by August 24th. That is an organizational failure. That you were playing that many ball games where you require your setup man to get in 65 times before the month of September rolls around. I mean, he's going to lap the field. And for what? For what? A team that's going to miss out on the wild card by 4 or 5 games. Because, folks, we all know that that's what's happening. We watched this story of the Giants' collapse, and it happened last year. They got to a point where, hey, you're relying on too many part-time players, too many young guys, too many unproven players at the major league level who don't post every day. Too many guys who don't have the track record of a Matt Chapman who does play every single day. And you can rely on Chapman in the month of September. You know who is a guy who you could rely on in the month of September? Jorge Soler. You can rely on Blake Snell. You can rely on Logan Webb. You can rely on Matt Chapman. And you can rely on Jorge Soler in the month of September. Why? Because they've done it before. Has Patrick Bailey shown you can rely on him in the month of September? No. Will we find out more about Elliot Ramos this September? Yes. But you don't want to find out about 2/3 of your lineup and 2/3 of your pitching staff and 2/3 of your bullpen in the month of September. And yet again, the Giants are in a position where they're going to have to do that because of failed roster construction, because of failed management tactics, and because this is a team that has missed so many opportunities this season. So I get the frustration that's out there. I get the angst, and I get the fact that on Friday evening, there wasn't a whole lot said on social media. You know why? Because the 49ers were playing a preseason game. And if a preseason game is mattering more than a late August regular season baseball game, that's a terrible sign for the current state and the future of the San Francisco Giants. Tells you everything you need to know about where this fan base is at. The diehards are there. The diehards are important. But you know what? You need the casuals. You need the folks who are going to turn 20,000 in attendance into 35,000 in attendance. And I don't see too many 35, 40,000 attendant games in the month of September for this Giants team. I think generally speaking, with the play over the last 2 weeks, the casuals are slowly tuning out, which means the Giants are trending toward failure. More on the other side. I'm Carrie Crowley. This is Giants Warm-Up, getting you set for Giants baseball. Blake Snell takes the mound in Seattle this afternoon. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the sports leader. Back here on Giants Warm-Up, Carrie Crowley rolling with you as we get you set for the Giants pregame show. It'll start around 12:10 this afternoon. And then first pitch coming your way from T-Mobile Park. Blake Snell for the Giants. George Kirby for the Seattle Mariners. Great pitcher matchup. Last night's game took over 3 hours. I would imagine today will be right around that 2:15, 2:20 sweet spot. Not quite like a Logan Webb start where you're always threatening 2 hours, but these two offenses, these two starting pitchers should be a pretty quick one for two teams who, like I said, not really headed anywhere. I can't write off the Giants yet because mathematically there's still hope. They're only 5 games out, but there's 2 teams in front of them vying for that third wild card spot. The Atlanta Braves and the New York Mets. And right now, I think it's unrealistic to expect both of those teams to collapse. The Braves are 10 games over 500. The Mets are 5 games over 500. And the Giants are where they've kind of been all season, at 500. 65-65 with 32 games to go. And so while I don't think it's entirely fair to look ahead to 2025, I do think it's important to evaluate the organizational progress or lack thereof that's been made in 2024. Because I think it would be unrealistic for me to sit here and talk about hope for a different September, hope for October for Giants fans. I think the better question is, what do Giants fans have to look forward to in the future? Because this is a team that will, in all likelihood, be coming off of a third consecutive season in the expanded wildcard era in which it missed the playoffs. It could, depending on if and when the Giants fall apart in September, need a new president of baseball operations. It could be looking for widespread organizational changes in how the farm system's managed, how the players are coached at the major league level. I think that Bob Melvin will be back next year. But I do think that the Giants could use a complete reshuffling of the coaching staff if they miss the playoffs this year. Because outside of Elliot Ramos, how many players have made significant progress, made real tangible improvements that make you believe that the future is going to be different? That next year, the Giants have a lot more to look forward to. In fact, I think you look at this current roster construction and you see the challenges that the Giants encounter this offseason with the way that Farhan Zaidi and this front office and ownership group has structured a number of the contracts. Blake Snell is having a great second half. And in fact, if he was healthy and available and pitching like this in the first half, we might be talking about a team that has serious wildcard hopes. But the reality is, he wasn't. Giants gambled on a short-term contract, and because Blake Snell is having a great second half, he's going to opt out. Blake Snell will become a free agent. Some team, not the San Francisco Giants, is going to pay him upward of $150 million. And the Blake Snell era in San Francisco will end without him ever pitching a playoff game. It's a prediction, and right now it feels to me like that's a pretty safe bet. I think you look at Matt Chapman and what he's meant to the Giants this season. He's been the most consistent position player since day one of the regular season. Remember, Elliot Ramos didn't come up until May 8th. Tyler Fitzgerald has really just been a second-half story. Matt Chapman's been there since day one. He's played almost every day, and that's what he's done throughout his career. Streaky hitter, sure. Great glove, absolutely. Someone you want back, but someone who will, because of the way he's played this season, opt out of the odd contract that he signed, where it was 3 years with an option every year, and essentially the Giants would have been on the hook for $54 million if Matt Chapman was terrible. Fortunately for them, he's been good. Unfortunately for them, because he's good, he's going to opt out and seek a new deal in the free agent market. And unfortunately for the Giants, there's no replacement in this farm system right now. You look at AAA, AA, high A, low A. You can't point to a single player and say, he's our third baseman of the future. And the crazy thing to me is, this predates Farhan Zaidi. The move that the Giants had to make after that abysmal 98-loss season in 2017, the move that Bobby Evans had to make was trading for Evan Longoria, because the Giants didn't have anyone in the farm system capable of playing third base on an everyday basis. And so Evan Longoria comes to San Francisco. He's a Giant for 5 seasons. And they didn't really develop anyone who could replace him. And now, Matt Chapman, well, they don't really have anyone who can replace him. So you're going to get to a point this offseason where Matt Chapman will hit free agency, and he'll look at the Giants, and they'll look at him, and they'll see a perfect match. But because Scott Boras is his agent, he'll also look at the Giants farm system and say, you really can't expect to end this playoff drought if you don't sign our client, if you don't bring Matt Chapman back to San Francisco and plug a massive void that exists for the Giants if Matt Chapman opts out, which, again, I anticipate he'll do. So the Giants are going to be in a position where they're likely going to have to overpay and overcommit to a third baseman because they have underdeveloped at that position. They don't have anyone who can step in. There's still a few folks on the text line who say, what about just giving David Villar the at-bats? What about seeing if Casey Schmidt can do it every day? Folks, we've gotten enough. We've seen enough glimpses to know that neither of those players are everyday players. Are they fifth infielders on a 26-man Major League roster? Maybe. Are they anything more than that? At this point, I feel pretty confident in saying no. And then there will be the folks that say, what about Marco Luciano? Can you move him to third base? Quite honestly, I said this to Marty earlier. I think Marco Luciano is going to be traded this offseason. I don't see a path forward for Marco Luciano in this Giants organization because they traded away Jorge Soler and said that Marco Luciano was our guy. But then he wasn't their guy. Bob Melvin hinted there might be some fatigue and leg issues, but the Giants clearly aren't in love with Marco Luciano. They haven't forced him up to the big league level and said, you're going to take 150 at-bats and we're just going to see what happens. So if he's not an organizational priority, and nothing leads me to believe that he is, he's as good as gone this offseason. Or he'll come in next year and be competing for that fourth, fifth infielder job. Maybe they say second base and replace Tyro Estrada with Luciano. But I don't think you just turn over third base to Luciano next season. So what do you do? What do you do at first base? This was a question that Marty asked me earlier. Can you really run it back with Lamont Wade Jr. and Wilmer Flores? No. Because we've seen this picture. We've seen how this unfolded. To borrow a phrase from Marty, look, the mosaic starts at the beginning of the season, and we see the finished product. And if you run it back with Lamont Wade Jr. and Wilmer Flores, the mosaic is going to look far too similar to the 2022, 2023, 2024 versions in 2025 if the Giants run it back. They have to be bold. They have to make major changes this offseason. And I just wonder if they're in a position to make enough change and to make enough meaningful change that they'll do anything to change their actual outlook. Because I thought that with all the signings last offseason, from Jung-Hoo Lee to Jordan Hicks to Blake Snell to Matt Chapman to Jorge Soler, that it would lead to a different record. And I don't think that my optimism was misplaced. I think that most folks I chatted with on Sports Phone in the evenings, on our Giants Hot Stove shows in January, February, and March, and on the text line here at KNBR, I think most folks felt that this year would be an 8 to 10 win improvement over the 79-win 2023 San Francisco Giants. The reality is the Giants will be fortunate to get to 79 wins this year because you look at the upcoming schedule in the month of September, and the Giants are playing a bunch of teams that will be playing in October. They will be using their series as the Giants to pad their win totals, to improve their positioning, and to march forward with confidence into October. And right now, all the Giants have done over the last 2 weeks is dash their hopes of playing competitive games at the end of September. Is dash their hopes that this year would be anything different than what we've seen over the last few seasons. And so I don't know what change looks like. To me, if you miss the playoffs in the expanded wildcard era 3 seasons in a row, and you commit the resources the Giants have in terms of payroll, in terms of changing managers, paying 2 at once, which is what the Giants are doing this year, they're still paying Gabe Kapler while they pay Bob Melvin. It probably doesn't bode well for the president of baseball operations and most folks in the front office. As Jed York once said, you can't fire the owner. Well, I don't think Greg Johnson's going to fire himself, but he does need to take a good, long, hard look at the way he's done business. Buster Posey needs to be heavily involved in the organizational decision-making moving forward. And the Giants need to change the strategies that have led them to this point. Because this point is a disappointment, and it has led to one of the worst things that you can have around a pro sports franchise: fan apathy. You look at the outrage from Friday night when the Giants blow a 4-run 8th-inning lead up in Seattle against the Mariners in a pivotal game, and maybe I was looking in the wrong places. I just didn't see or hear a lot of it. I looked at our text line this morning when I came in. Weren't too many folks who were utterly concerned with the state of the San Francisco Giants. I think most folks see where this season is headed. Most folks have watched this story unfold before, and the casuals have largely tuned out. And I mentioned it's a product of the last 2 weeks. Failed opportunities against the Braves, the White Sox, and now the Mariners, and then the A's as well. But it's also a product of all of the decisions, like I just ran through. The contracts with Snell and Chapman and Robbie Ray, who will opt in next year, and you're on the hook for $25 million. Of Michael Conforto, who opted in last year because he wasn't good enough in 2023 to opt out. When you're consistently on the hook for the players who are bad, and the players who are good get away, that's a philosophy you have to do away with. And that's something the Giants must change this offseason. So beyond that, I don't know what changes they'll implement, but I do know that there will be a lot more. They can't continue doing this. Fans have seen enough, and they've shown us they're just not that interested anymore. So we'll see what attendance looks like at Oracle Park in September. But I don't think most folks are going to go to the Yard and expect, hey, this is the night where the Giants begin their run toward October. Again, way too soon to write this team off. It's only 5 games in the wild card. We've seen teams overcome more. But what we have to go off is 130 games of what they've shown us this season. Of games like last night where victory slips away and the Giants miss an opportunity. I'm Carrie Crowley. More when we come back. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the Sports Leader.
When the game is over, hear the post-game wrap with John, Dave, Kruk, and Kite on KNBR and KNBR FM, San Francisco.
All right, we're back here on Giants Warm-Up. Carrie Crowley getting you set for Giants baseball on the radio. Blake Snell takes the mound this afternoon at T-Mobile Park in Seattle against his hometown Mariners. Giants looking to turn things around after a brutal, devastating, embarrassing loss to the Seattle Mariners in 10 innings in last night's ball game. We'll talk more about that in just a moment, give you the lineups in just a moment. But first, it's time for our Key Player of the Week, sponsored by Key Point Credit Union. Our Key Player of the Week for the San Francisco Giants, how about Ryan Walker, who's made 3 appearances over the last week, and in 5 innings, he struck out 13 batters. Ryan Walker comes in the 8th inning last night, completely bails out Tyler Rogers, and gives the Giants a chance to win that ball game. He deserves better. The guy has made 64 appearances this season. That's one off the Major League lead, held, by the way, by Tyler Rogers. 64 appearances, way too many when it's August 24th. Guy's trending toward 80 appearances, but he lowered his ERA to 2. It's an ERA of 2. The guy is an all-star caliber reliever for the Giants. He looks like he could be a closer of the future for this ball club as they welcome Camilo Doval back today. I want to see Ryan Walker continue to take on that 9th inning, but this is someone who twice in the last week, after being used as much as he has this season, has gone 2 innings for the Giants. 1 in that win against the A's on Sunday, and then, of course, last night he goes 2 innings, strikes out 5, strikes out the side in the 9th inning. And the Giants, well, they don't give him any help. Ryan Walker deserves better, but again, he is your Key Point Credit Union Player of the Week. Up next, it's time for our standings update, sponsored by the Alameda County Probations Department. Visit joinacpd.org today for a career that matters. Looking around Major League Baseball at the standings as we head into games this afternoon, some already underway on the East Coast. Let's start with the National League West, where the Dodgers lead the division by 4 games, 77-52, after Shohei Ohtani joins the 40-40 club in magnificent fashion last night. Walk-off grand slam for the Dodgers as they win it over the Tampa Bay Rays. Arizona Diamondbacks in second place right now, 73-56. They lead the NL wildcard standings just a half game ahead of the San Diego Padres, 73-57. So one ahead in the loss column right now as the Padres won last night against the New York Mets. Paul Blackburn knocked out of that game with an injury. Giants in 4th place in the West, 5 games out of the National League wild card, 12.5 out in the division at 65-65. And then you've got the Colorado Rockies, who are never in this thing, 47-82 right now, guaranteed to finish under 500 yet again. Looking around at the National League East, it's the Philadelphia Phillies who lead the East right now, 74-54, 20 games over 500. They've got a 5-game edge in the division ahead of the Atlanta Braves, 10 games over 500 with 69 wins and 59 losses, followed by the New York Mets, 5 games over 500, 7.5 out in the division, 2.5 out in the wild card. They are the team the Giants would have to jump if they really want to get back into this thing. The Mets at 67-62. The Nationals round things out. No, it's the Miami Marlins who round things out. The Nationals at 58-71. The Marlins 46-82. They'll be at Oracle Park next weekend. Looking at the NL Central, it's the Milwaukee Brewers who have a huge 10-game advantage in the Central at 74-54. Cardinals back down to 500 right now. They're 5 games out of the wild card, as are the Giants. The Chicago Cubs, 1 game under 500, 5.5 out in the wild card. Cincinnati Reds, 5 games under 500. They look like they were trending toward a more hopeful resolution to their season. Those hopes have dissipated over the last few weeks. Then the Pittsburgh Pirates round things out at 61-67. As we head over to the American League, the Yankees lead the AL East at 76-53, followed closely by the Baltimore Orioles. 1.5 out in that division. The Boston Red Sox, 7 games over 500 in 3rd place there. The Tampa Bay Rays at 500, then the Toronto Blue Jays rounding out that division, 61-68. The AL Central has become quite a race. The Cleveland Guardians have lost 13 of 19. They're 73-55 right now. The Kansas City Royals, hot on their heels. They're a game out in the division. They hold a game advantage in the wild card at 72-56. Minnesota Twins, 3rd place in that division. It's anyone's division right now. They're just 2 out behind the Cleveland Guardians. They also hold a wild card spot right now. The Tigers behind them and the Chicago White Sox at 31-98. Somehow 3-7 over their last 10 ball games. The White Sox have scored just 400 runs this season, a minus 262 run differential. Looking at the AL West, the Houston Astros lead the division at 69-59, 10 games over 500. The Seattle Mariners right behind them, 4.5 games out after their recent collapse. They got back on the winning track last night. Texas Rangers, 9.5 out in the division. The Oakland A's, 14.5 out. And the Los Angeles Angels, 54-75. Once again, trending toward a top draft pick, 15.5 games out in the division. Real quick, we'll give you the San Francisco Giants lineup today that Bob Melvin is rolling out against Seattle Mariners right-hander George Kirby. Tyler Fitzgerald gets the call yet again every day at shortstop. He's the leadoff man for the Giants, hitting 300 on the season. Lamont Wade Jr. bats second place, first base. Elliot Ramos, the DH for the Giants. He's one shy of the 20 home run threshold after his bomb to the left field bleachers. The third deck last night. He's the DH for the Giants. Michael Conforto will play left field and bat cleanup. Matt Chapman hits fifth over at third base. He is at 20 home runs. You've got Mike Yastrzemski hitting sixth out in right field. Tyro Estrada batting seventh, playing second base. Grant McCray, the center fielder, coming off of a double in last night's ball game. He will hit eighth. And Kurt Casale back in the squat today doing the catching for Blake Snell. Blake Snell 2-3 on the season, a 3.67 ERA. Remarkable how low that number has gotten after his dismal start to the season. 101 strikeouts on the year for Snell. This day in Giants history coming up next year. Listening to KNBR, the